Arden. I couldn't fight him with Tessa on my back. Mr. Winters was older, stronger, and at the moment more agile, and Tessa could barely hold her head up. I knew if I put her down, she wouldn't be able to hold her ground either. She was in no condition to run. She might not even survive another hit of whatever he'd given her. So I did the one thing I could. "Hold tight," I whispered. And then I shifted. The pain tore through me instantly, claws ripping from my fingers, bones snapping and rearranging, skin stretching into fur. My clothes shredded off my body, falling in useless ribbons into the grass. My muscles expanded, my senses sharpened, and a growl rose in my throat like a war cry. Tessa whimpered as her weight shifted against my new form, but she clung to me instinctively, her fingers tangled in the scruff of my neck. With that, I bolted into the trees, my paws pounding into the soil. The forest blurred past us in a rush of green and shadow, my ears twitching at every snapped twig, every breath behind us. My legs stretched farther than I ever thought they could, driven by nothing but the fire in my chest and the primal scream inside my skull. Escape. Behind me, the ground thundered. Mr. Winters was following after me. He had shifted too, and I could hear his claws scraping against stone along with the angry huff of his breath. Every step felt like a countdown to disaster. "Arden," Tessa whimpered, her voice a broken thread in the wind. "Just leave me. I'll distract him. You can get away, please." "No," I snapped. My voice was a guttural growl in this form. "Don't you dare say that." I ran faster. The wind lashed against my fur, tree branches slashing at my sides, but I didn't stop. I leapt over roots, slid down ravines, and tore through vines. I was faster than he was. I had to believe that. Being lost in this forest before turned out to be a blessing. I remembered the path Kate and I had found when we scouted this area. I veered toward it now, banking hard left, sending leaves into the air behind me. Mr. Winters roared behind us, and still I ran. My paws hit the forest floor. Tessa was slipping, her hold weakening, and I had to keep adjusting to make sure she didn't fall. I didn't have time. He was gaining on me. The next few turns came in flashes, over the creek, past the rock pile, under the tree. My mind was working like wildfire, burning every ounce of energy into escaping, until I felt pain, hot and sharp, stabbing into my thigh. I yelped and staggered, skidding across the forest floor as my back leg gave out. Tessa tumbled from my back with a pained grunt, rolling a few feet before collapsing against a patch of dirt. I turned around, teeth bared, vision swimming. I saw Mr. Winters back in his human form. He was fully naked, blood smeared across his chest. His hair was still damp, sticking to his eyes, and the empty black pits in his eyes locked onto me with anger. A knife glinted in his hand, its blade glistening with dark fluid. It wasn't silver, I knew that. Still, a tremble ran through my leg as I collapsed to my knees. It was bleeding, but it wasn't the blood that scared me. It was the scent coming from the wound. Tessa groaned from the ground. "That's what he gave me," she rasped. "That scent, it's the same." I stared at the wound on my leg, horrified. The edges around it were already beginning to go numb. My heartbeat faltered. My breath came in gasps. I tried to stand, but my balance wavered. My limbs weren't listening to me anymore. If I ended up like Tessa, if I ended up unable to move, to run, there would be no use. We were done. "Arden, no," Tessa whispered, crawling toward me with the last of her strength. I crawled to her, too, seeking some kind of solace. However, everything slipped away in a moment. Tessa screamed. A sharp cry escaped her lips as Mr. Winters tossed her aside like a rag doll. Her body flew across the forest floor and crashed into the base of a tree with a sickening thud. She crumpled to the forest floor, unmoving, her long hair splayed out in the dirt. "Tessa!" The howl ripped from my throat, wild and feral. I collapsed to my chest, feeling the strength leave my body. Mr. Winters turned back to me, smiling casually. "I told you," he said as he wiped the knife on his thigh. "All you had to do was follow through with my words. Obey, and you would have been in a much better position." I whimpered as he stepped forward, his shadow stretching over me. "But no. You just had to play the hero, the martyr, the noble little bitch." His smile widened. "And now look at what you've done. You made me angry. You made things difficult." He gestured toward Tessa's crumpled body. "We were going to have a good time, the three of us, on the bed. Maybe even a little fun before I put you to sleep permanently, peacefully. But now? His teeth gleamed. "Now you're gonna get it." I growled low, my claws digging into the soil as I tried to force my body to fight again. But it was like trying to hold water in my hands. My body trembled once more, and then I shifted back. I collapsed onto the forest floor in human form. Naked, exposed, vulnerable, the leaves scratched my skin. I clutched at the dirt, panting, refusing to look at him, but I felt his eyes on me, the way they dragged across my skin, lecherous and slow, as though undressing something already bare. I then heard the sound of his tongue licking his lips, a slow, deliberate slurp. "Now I see," he muttered, voice heavy with want. "Now I understand why Cade goes crazy for you." I didn't move, couldn't. My voice was trapped in my throat. "I want a taste, too." "No," I whispered, choking on the word. My fingers clawed the ground. "Please." "No," he crouched in front of me, his breath fanned against my cheek. "Cade," I whispered. A final desperate cry, but he only chuckled darkly. "Cade won't save you." He gripped my chin, forcing me to look into his eyes. "You're mine now." His gaze flicked to Tessa, still motionless, blood forming on her temple. "And Fenra, too." "No," I rasped. "Cade." She wasn't here. I tore through the cabin in my wolf form, claws ripping through floorboards, shelves shattered, every drawer overturned, every corner destroyed. My breath came in harsh snarls, teeth bared as I stormed through the place like a beast gone mad. But she wasn't here. "Where is she?" Bethany's voice cracked in my head. She was behind me, her breathing ragged, her human form trembling. "She's not in the cabin. She's not here." But her scent was everywhere, mingled with Tessa's. So they had to be here recently, which meant that they must be near. The broken window was a sign of their struggle to escape. My paws crushed the already broken glass as I turned sharply, rage flaring so hot it burned in my chest. I couldn't breathe. She was so close. Arden. My mind screamed her name over and over again. Just then, another wolf burst through the brush. I recognized him instantly, Rowan. His jaw clenched, my eyes narrowed. "You came. You're being a damn menace," he growled through the link. "You wouldn't let this go if I don't come. Then help me find them. They're not here. But they were." Her scent's fresh with a strong trail. "Let's head different directions. You take the high ridge, I'll follow the creek." He nodded once, and without another word, we moved. Bethany scrambled up onto my back, clutching my fur, and I ran. I ran like the ground couldn't hold me. Like the sky might fall if I didn't reach her in time. Every muscle screamed, every breath was fire. I didn't have it in me to stop. "Please be safe, please be safe, please be safe." Just then the necklace around Bethany's neck began to glow dark red. "Cade," Bethany whispered, muffled by the wind. Still, I heard it clearly. I didn't need her to say anything more. A growl ripped from my throat as I lunged forward, faster than I ever had in my life. Arden, my Arden. She couldn't be gone. She couldn't. Not after everything. When Honey came home, regressed, and with no memories, I felt like I lost someone. I didn't know what to do with myself. I hoped I could have protected her like she had protected me. Even now, a part of me felt like I had failed. No matter how hard I tried to deny it, it shattered me, broke me into 1,000 unrecognizable pieces. But if Arden, no, it would destroy me. It would kill what little was left that she herself built. Because Arden wasn't just a girl. She wasn't just a promise. She was my fight. She was my chance at being whole again. She made me feel again, like I mattered, like I wasn't just some walking scar of guilt and fury. Without her, I'd go feral. Without her, I was nothing. And somehow it was like my legs knew where she was before I did. The scent grew thicker. I caught blood, sweat, tears, Tessa's, Arden's. Then the trees broke and I saw a clearing. And what I saw there, hell itself boiled in my veins. He was on top of her, naked, that bastard. His mouth was on her neck like she was his to claim. She was struggling weakly under him, and that was when I lost it. Bethany leapt from my back with a cry of pure maternal rage, landing hard, her human body hitting the dirt with a snarl of bones. Her necklace blazed red. Meanwhile, I didn't think anymore. I leapt straight over her. Straight at him. Straight at the monster who dared touch what was mine. Bethany didn't hesitate. She ran to Arden, collapsing beside her with a gasp of horror. I caught her scent and something foreign, something wrong, coating Arden's skin. It was the scent of poison. Tessa was limp nearby, her body twitching in weak, painful spasms, but all I could see was him. Mr. Winters stood there, chest heaving, blood smeared down his shoulder where my claws had slashed him in passing. But he didn't look like a man in pain. No, he looked amused. To him, this must just be a game. I growled low, the sound rumbling in my chest like thunder. My claws dug into the soil, my fur bristling as I crouched lower. Looking at him like this, I lost all control. I lunged at him, baring my teeth, inches from his throat. He didn't flinch. He laughed like the lunatic he was. "You can't kill me," he spat, eyes wide and twisted. "Not unless you want them both to die." I didn't care. I slammed my body into his, knocking him down. We rolled over the dirt, claws and fists and snarls. When I pinned him beneath me, I didn't shift back just yet. I wanted him to see the full fury in my eyes as an animal. "I'm going to try," I growled. He smiled. I shifted back, my body shaking with rage, hands already pounding his face, fist after fist, blood splattered, his lip split, his cheekbone cracked, but he kept laughing. "Go ahead," he barked through the blood. "Try harder. Cade!" Another blow. And another. Still, he smiled through the red. "Kill me!" he howled. "Go on. Beat me until I die." I grabbed him by the shoulder, yanking him closer until our faces were inches apart. "What the fuck did you do to them?" I snarled. His eyes gleamed. He chuckled. "You're too late," he whispered. My eyes narrowed. "Those two women?" he chuckled. "You've got maybe an hour before they start convulsing." And then he made a sharp, slicing motion across his throat. "Lights out." My hands shook. "You bastard." "Kill me," he interrupted, smile widening, "and you'll never know what the antidote is to the poison I created." Cade. Everything around me faded into white noise the second those words left his mouth. "You'll never know what the antidote is." I still had him pinned to the ground, my hand clutching his throat, my fist still bloody from the last blow. His grin was wide and deranged. He looked up at me like he was invincible. And in that moment, maybe he was. "Cade," Bethany's voice wavered behind me. "Cade." I could hear the tremor in her voice, the fear in every breath. "It's a new poison," she muttered. I can't name it." Fuck. Every instinct in me screamed to rip through him, tear his jugular open, and make him bleed for what he did. But in the end, I couldn't do it. "You think I'm an easy opponent?" He chuckled, lifting his head slightly higher. He wheezed, but he was still completely unafraid. "I thought this through, of course," he added casually. "You think I would walk in here half-cocked with no backup plan? Please." His eyes flicked toward Bethany, and the smile on his lips turned cruel. "I've been wanting to get Fenra from you for years. Isn't it nice, Bethany? Look at you now, weak, sick, still pretending to be the symbol of hope for everyone." Bethany said nothing, her silence sharper than any scream. "You should go," Winters continued. "Enjoy the last few years of your life without stress. Hand Fenra to me. I'll spare you. Why keep fighting? Why support these idealistic children?" He spat blood to the side. "You're wasting your time." I saw Bethany's expression dim, but I couldn't focus on her just yet. I couldn't even focus on the pain splitting through my fists or the blood dripping down his face. All I could focus on was the rising heat in my chest, the thought of Arden's limp body. "The antidote," I snarled, tightening my grip around his throat. "Give it to me." He only smiled wider. "You're not getting it from me like this." My knuckles tightened. I pressed harder, hard enough he began to choke, but he didn't beg. He didn't plead. He wanted this. Just then, a rush of movement crashed through the trees. Leaves scattered. I glanced up just as Rowan arrived, his wolf form crashing through the underbrush. He didn't even look at me. He shifted quickly, and his eyes found her. "Tessa," he whispered. "They've been poisoned," Bethany choked out. "Both of them." Mr. Winters cackled beneath me, delighted. "I didn't know you two were friends," he said, enjoying himself. He turned his head slightly, watching Rowan. "Didn't your parents always compare you to Cade after your brother died?" Rowan froze. "Pity," Winters murmured. "You didn't escape comparison even then. You're always the spare. It must sting, huh?" Rowan's jaw tensed. He didn't answer, but the look in his eyes was enough. "This makes it fun," Winters continued. "I see you're pretty soft-hearted. Helping Cade now. If I were you, I wouldn't bother." "Just kill him," Rowan said suddenly, turning to me. "This country is better off with him dead." "No," Bethany barked. "We can't. If we kill him now, it'll end their lives. Tessa, Arden." Her voice cracked. "They don't have much time." I looked down at the man beneath me. The smug bastard was still smiling. My hands trembled. What the fuck do you need? I snarled. Mr. Winters bared his teeth in a grin. I'm glad you asked. He coughed once, spat more blood, then looked me dead in the eyes. I need something, he said smoothly. Something only you can give. Withdraw from the candidacy, he said. Today. Publicly. Then I'll give you what you need. My breath hitched. And if I don't, his head tilted lazily. Then we can do this the hard way, he said. He licked blood from his lip. Let them die. Keep your pride and bury your mate while you're at it. No. The voice was hoarse and soft and still so beautiful, but it cut through the noise. I snapped my head toward Arden. She was slumped against Bethany, her skin pale, her lips dry, but her eyes were wide open, burning into mine. No, she whispered again, more force behind it this time. I didn't even realize I had loosened my grip on Winters until I saw him exhale freely beneath me. Cade, Arden muttered. Her voice broke. So did my heart. She tried to move, but she could barely lift her arm. Still, she fought to speak. Don't give in. Her eyes locked onto mine, pleading, please. My chest rose and fell with the weight of everything pressing against it. Duty, responsibility, her. I opened my mouth, but the words fell flat. If you do, she whispered, I will never forgive you. That was what shattered me, the tears in her voice. She knew what he was asking of me, what it meant, everything we'd fought for, all the lives depending on it. But in exchange, I would be giving up her. Cade, please, she said again, softer this time. Her strength was leaving her, and I was at war with myself. I didn't know what was right. The leader in me wanted to stand tall, to spit in Winter's face. But the man in me, the man in love with the girl on the ground, he was breaking. Time's up, Winters said suddenly, his voice sharp and smug. I turned back to him, breathing hard. Let's just fight fair and square now, shall we? The last polls showed that I'm in the lead, but hey, you might still have a chance. I can't kill you because they might suspect me, so enjoy your defeat. He rose to his feet with a smirk, brushing the blood off his lips like it was nothing. But, he added, eyes flicking to Arden, arrange the funeral of your mate before anything else, all right? A shadow stepped in front of him, Rowan. You're not going anywhere, he said coldly. His stance was wide and unshakable. Is that right? Winters chuckled. Suddenly, the ground shifted beneath our feet. I felt it. Rowan did too. Bethany stiffened behind me. Figures emerged from the trees. 1, 2, 5, 10 more. Students, elite order students. About 30 of them stood around us, some familiar, some not, but all armed, knives, claws, blades. Their expressions were blank and dead-eyed, loyal to him, and right beside Winters was Kieran and Jaxon. I called them here in case I got caught in something, Mr. Winters chuckled. It looks like they arrived right on time. Arden. Bethany's arms were around me, holding me like I was the most precious person in the entire world. I didn't have much strength, but I leaned into her, burying my head into her chest, my hand gripping what little fabric I could. I lifted my eyes sluggishly. That's when I saw we were surrounded. Not only that, but beside Mr. Winters were none other than Kieran and Jaxon. I couldn't lie to myself anymore. Even knowing what they were capable of, even after all their masks had fallen, I never thought they'd sink this low. Hey, sis, Kieran smirked. Jaxon couldn't meet my gaze. His eyes shifted away. He turned slightly, just enough that I couldn't see his expression. Why? I whispered. My voice came out hoarse. Why are you guys doing this? You're better off dead, Kieran replied coldly. And with you gone, I get to be normal again. Just me with a shiny new job at the United Factions once Mr. Winters wins. My heart cracked, and then shattered when Jaxon finally turned to Cade and not me. If I can't have Arden, he said quietly, then neither can you. No one can have her. Bethany's grip tightened around me. She was breathing hard. Her heartbeat was frantic in my ears. Stay with me, she whispered. I nodded, but deep down I didn't know if I could. We were surrounded. They had us. And I saw the same realization in Cade's eyes, even in Rowan's. We were trapped. Even if I died, even if Cade escaped, even if he fought with everything he had, it wouldn't matter. Because Mr. Winters had already won in the ways that mattered. He would spin the narrative, blame the chaos on Cade, criminalize Rowan, the North would fall apart, the people would panic, our allies would abandon us. My death would be painted like a tragedy Cade caused in desperation. Bethany's word would be discredited as illness-induced delusion. I couldn't stop the tears. They slid down my cheek as silent sobs rocked through me. My head ached, my limbs burned, but the pain couldn't compare to the grief eating me alive from the inside. "Shh," Bethany muttered, rocking me gently. "It's okay. It's all right." Still, despite it all, I pushed myself up. My knees buckled, and Bethany tried to hold me back, but I broke free. My legs wobbled like a newborn's. My breath rasped out in wheezes. Mr. Winter's eyes widened. "Well," he muttered, "that's a surprise. This poison of mine isn't as strong as I thought. You shouldn't be standing right now. That's a shame." I didn't answer. My gaze flicked over the crowd, scanning faces, and then I saw someone familiar. Cecily, a senior from Silver Quill. She had been kind to me ever since. I remembered her smile, and yet here she was, now, standing in the enemy's camp, her expression almost ashamed. Her eyes met mine and then darted away. It seemed everyone had their price. I kept walking until I reached Cade's side. His hand immediately came to hold me, arm cradling my waist, supporting me. I could feel the anguish in his silence. "You'll never win," I said to Mr. Winters. He smirked. "But haven't I already?" He stepped forward slowly. "Let me paint the picture for you, darling." He gestured around. "I gave you a chance to fight fair and square. I offered Cade a simple deal, withdraw, and I'd give you everything. But now, you've refused. You can't change my mind." He sneered. "I can manipulate everything to my liking. Cade will be the bad guy. I have 30 witnesses who will swear they saw him lose control, that he kidnapped you, that he went feral." He turned to Rowan. "And your little friend over there?" "Rowan's parents will suppress any involvement. We all know they only tolerate him to protect their reputation." Rowan's expression hardened. "And once you die," Mr. Winters said, turning back to me, "and Cade loses his mind, the North will crumble. They'll turn on him in a heartbeat. Nobody wants an unstable leader. He'll be disqualified by force. Executed, even." "And that girl," he sneered, pointing toward Tessa. "Shame I didn't get to taste her, but she'll die with you. What a treat, right? Besties even in heaven." A low growl ripped from Rowan's throat. "And Bethany Winters?" he scoffed. "Nobody believes a delusional, dying woman. What she says, what she saw, will be dismissed and forgotten." Mr. Winters spread his arms as if welcoming applause. "I've already won," he whispered. "Fair and square, Arden. No matter what, no matter who." Chuckles filled the air, mocking and cruel. "Do you get it now?" Mr. Winters asked with that damned smile, cocking his head. I looked up slowly, voice brittle but loud. "It's not over." More laughter echoed. I coughed once, hard enough to taste iron. Bethany's grip trembled behind me, like she wanted to yank me back down. Cade was whispering something under his breath, desperate. But I pushed forward. "It's not over until it's over," I said louder. That got their attention. I turned toward the line of elite students in front of me, weapons still drawn, eyes watching like wolves told to sit still. Cecily was among them, her jaw tight. Some shifted, some looked away. The guilt on a few faces was unmistakable. "You're vile," I spat, breath hitching. "All of you." The word cracked the silence. "You joined this school to be leaders, to be the best. You swore to protect the people beneath you, but now look at you." I dragged my gaze over the students, one by one. "Instead of fighting the system, you got conquered by it." Cecily flinched. "You've turned your blades toward your own, just to please the man who offered you points on a scoreboard. You'll never win. Not like this." "Oh, don't be a bother, Arden," Kieran spat. "Just die in fucking peace, will you? Even now, you want to make a fuss?" My glare cut toward him, no longer trembling. "I'll make a fuss until my last breath," I said, then turned my gaze to Jaxon. "And you." His eyes lifted. "I should have never been your mate." He clenched his fists but didn't say a word. I hoped the silence hurt him more than anything else. I turned back toward Cade and our eyes locked. His expression broke me. There was pleading in it, 100,000 reasons to stop. But I didn't. "I may die," I said, voice rising, "but my death will mean something." Cade stepped toward me, but I lifted my hand. "No, don't stop me." He froze, breath ragged. "Cade will fight for me," I whispered, "because he loves me." Cade let out a strangled sound, and I felt Bethany's fingers digging into my arm behind me. "And that's one thing all of you will never have or understand. Not Mr. Winters. Not Kieran. Not Jaxon." I took one last breath. "Because love demands courage, and you don't have an ounce of that." Silence conquered the clearing for a few moments, only heavy breathing clawing through. Then Mr. Winters snorted. "Are you done?" I faced him, jaw set. "Let us go then," he said with mock graciousness before turning to the students. "Arrest Cade and Rowan. Leave the 3 ladies here." "No," I said. He raised a brow. Rowan let out a low growl, beginning to shift, and Cade took a protective step in front of me. They were all getting ready to fight. Mr. Winters raised his hand. Just then, footsteps filled the silence. They were louder than before, heavier, faster, and more of them. The sound of people emerging from the woods, from the trees, from all directions. Everyone's head snapped toward the bushes. Elias stepped through. His hair was a mess, twigs stuck in his collar, and there was mud on his cheek. But he was grinning. He held a phone in his hand. "It's over, you say?" he called out. He lifted the phone higher. "Tell that to our audience." "Arden's? Elias?" Elias was here. My eyes widened, heart racing in my chest when I saw him step toward the clearing, bold and unbothered, a phone held up high in his hand. A bright red dot blinked in the corner of the screen, and the realization hit me hard, but the good kind. He was live streaming everything. "Tell that again, Mr. Winters," Elias said coldly, his voice booming across the clearing. "The part where you said you'd manipulate the world, how you plan on killing these 2 ladies, how you would win no matter what and no matter who your opponent is. Say it louder for the entire country to hear." Mr. Winters froze, and for the first time I saw a flicker of panic in his eyes. The usual smugness he had was gone, and the satisfaction was much more than I had ever expected. Cade turned to him sharply, blood dripping down his knuckles and still holding me tightly. He looked to Rowan, and Rowan gave him the smallest nod. A silent message passed between them. So Rowan had called him. No wonder Rowan appeared the calmest out of all of us. Although I could see how his eyes darted to Tessa from time to time, his concern hidden yet unmistakable. Elias being here made a lot of sense. The east was closest to the south. The route was pretty dangerous, but with Elias leading his army, they had made it in time. Mr. Winters didn't expect it. He probably assumed the divide between true alphas, between territories and factions, was enough to isolate us, to keep us disjointed and unorganized. Jaxon agreeing with him was the testament to that. However, he underestimated another thing he would never understand: friendship and loyalty. I let out a soft, choked breath. Relief. Hope. A sob escaped before I could hold it back. From behind Elias, more figures emerged. Uniformed wolves of the Eastern Army. Dozens. No, hundreds surrounded the clearing in silence, coming to a halt with Elias's command. It was a reckoning. We were no longer outnumbered. They were. Mr. Winters cursed under his breath, his towel barely clinging to his waist now. Something passed through his eyes when he stepped back. I knew he was trying to escape. He turned to bolt, but Elias lifted his arm. "Capture them," Elias shouted. "Don't kill. Take them alive. Every one of them will be tied." The chaos erupted in an instant. Wolves shifted, metal clashed, and people screamed. The traitorous students, the ones who followed Winters, Kieran, Jaxon, they tried to run. But the East had anticipated that. They were surrounded. I fell to my knees, the sudden motion knocking the wind out of me. I had felt tired for a while, but I held it out because I wanted to make my point. Cade was there instantly, arms catching me before I collapsed completely. His touch was warm, trembling, his breath ragged against my temple. "Arden," he choked. I looked up at him. The war raged around us, but at that moment there was only him and me. I reached up with every ounce of strength I had left and touched his cheek. "We did it," I whispered. He shook his head, tears already falling. Don't talk like that." "No," I smiled, even as pain surged through my body. "Cade, listen. You did it. We did it. You always thought you weren't enough, that no one would believe in you, but I always did. Stop it, please, Arden. Breathe for me. It's okay. You're going to live." "I always believed in you," I said again, firmer this time, even as my voice cracked. "Even when you didn't. You gave me a reason to live again. You gave me honey. You gave me family. You gave me you." His arms tightened around me like he could hold my soul in place. "I'm not losing you," he breathed. "You're not going anywhere. Don't do this." "I'm proud of you," I murmured, my head resting against his chest. "Take care of honey. She'll miss me. And you." I looked up at him, tears streaking down both our faces. "Make the world better for me, baby." "Don't say goodbye," he said, his voice cracking, utterly broken. "Please, don't say goodbye." Bethany stumbled toward us, falling to her knees beside me. Her hands cupped my face, her breath shallow and rapid. "No," she cried. "My daughter, please, I'm your family. I'm here now. I'm here. Don't go yet, my daughter. You can't go before me." I felt my heart stop for a second, but it felt good. I didn't think I would receive this kind of love ever in my life. It was just unfortunate I got to experience it too late. My eyes met hers, and I smiled. "I'm happy," I whispered. Her tears fell freely now. Her hand trembled as she cradled my cheek. "I knew it in my heart that you were mine," she sobbed. "Even with the short time we spent together, I care for you so much." I took her hand in mine. "Me too. I really do." It took everything in me to say the last word. "Mom," Bethany let out a sob that cracked the sky. "You're not allowed to say goodbye," Cade muttered again, holding me tighter. "You're going to make it, okay? We'll find the antidote. We'll save you." But I knew. I could feel it. Something inside me was giving up. I was tired. So tired. I had fought so long, so hard, and I wasn't scared anymore. My heart was full. "And you," I whispered to Cade, my vision blurring. "I love you. I love you so much." He bent down and kissed my forehead with such tenderness that I felt it in my bones. "I'll fight," he whispered against my skin. "I'll never stop." I nodded weakly. "Take care of my mom." My world began to dim. The sounds of war turned muffled and distant. All I could hear was Cade's sobs and Bethany's cries. And in that darkness, I wasn't afraid, because I had found love, because I had found home, because I knew Fenra was saved. Arden. Everything was soft and heavy at the same time. My chest didn't burn anymore. My throat didn't ache. There was no pressure on my lungs. Was this it? Was this what it felt like to die? Somewhere distantly, the world still spun on. I heard the war, the clash of metal, the shouts, the snarls, the sounds of chaos. But it was all so far away, like I was drifting at the bottom of a lake while the world raged on above me. Then a voice pierced through. "No, please. Let me go. I have the antidote." It echoed in my head, bouncing against the stillness. "Let her go," Cade said, sounding desperate. I wanted to reach out to him and tell him I was still here, but I couldn't lift a finger. I was sinking again back into the velvet dark. But then something else tugged me back. "This is the antidote, Alpha," a soft voice said, shaking and breathless. "I cannot do it. I cannot hide this anymore." I saw her through the haze. Cecily stood above us. "Why should I trust you?" Cade asked. "Because," her voice wavered, "because I was the one who curated the poison." Even in my dazed state, I felt the shock through the air. She had always been smart, and she was one of the top students in terms of academics, which was why she was in the Silver Quill. But the point system must have twisted everything. I didn't blame her. This place turned all of us into people we didn't recognize. "Give it to her," Bethany begged. "Ross, this might be our last chance." I tried to open my mouth because even though I had accepted this all, I still wanted to live. I want to live. There was still a lot I wanted to do. I felt the tip of the bottle on my lips, but again, I couldn't move them. Just then, I felt Cade's lips press against mine, trembling and urgent. Then, cool liquid flowed past them, down my throat. I coughed weakly. The pain roared back for one terrifying second, like my body was waking up all at once. Then real sweet air filled my lungs. I sucked in another breath and another, the tightness easing by the second. The weight on my chest lifted. My heart thudded wildly like it was making up for lost time. It worked. The antidote worked. My eyes fluttered open, and color returned to the world. The sky, the smoke, the red-soaked earth. Bethany was crying beside me, crumpled on the ground, shoulders shaking as she sobbed into her palms. Cecily was already walking toward the Eastern Guards with her head bowed, surrendering. She didn't even look back. I would never understand her completely. But right now, all I knew was that I was alive, and I was in Cade's arms. He held me with everything he had, burying his face into my shoulder like he couldn't believe I was real. I raised my hand slowly and curled it into the front of his shirt. His chest heaved. His tears soaked my skin. "You're okay," he choked out. "You're okay. You're breathing." I gave a soft nod. "Breathing," I whispered. He pulled back, just enough to see my face. His lips quivered, and I'd never seen his eyes so red. I looked around, heart stuttering again. "Tessa, where's Tessa?" Cade cupped my face, gently. "She's being given the antidote by Rowan. Don't worry, she's safe." I closed my eyes, and relief bloomed in my chest. Thank goodness, I breathed. Was it really over? I thought I lost you, Cade said, his voice breaking all over again. Arden, I thought I was going to lose you forever. I reached up, brushing away one of the tears trailing down his face. I'm right here. He kissed my palm. Don't ever do that again, he said, a broken laugh escaping through the sob in his throat. Don't ever try to be the hero alone. Don't ever give up. Don't ever say goodbye again. I can't. His voice cracked. I can't live in a world without you in it. I smiled, tired but safe in his arms. I'm not going anywhere, I whispered. I'm here, I whispered. Cade's arms tightened around me, his entire body trembling as he held me. My head tilted slightly, my eyes scanning through the fading battlefield until my eyes landed on my mother. Her hands were clasped over her chest, her mouth quivering with a smile that reached her eyes. She looked lighter and younger somehow, as though the burden she'd been carrying for so long had finally fallen off her shoulders. I'd never seen her look like that before, and in that moment I realized she was happy. So was I. The thought of her illness tugged at my chest, whispering that none of this would last, that time was borrowed, that every second I spent with her could be the last. But I shook it off, because for once we had time. Just then a shout shattered the peace. Winters has escaped, someone cried. What? Elias's voice rang out from somewhere behind me. Chaos flickered to life again, but none of it registered. I only saw a shadow moving fast right behind Cade. The light of the sunrise caught the blade in his hand, a long silver knife. Time stopped. My heartbeat clutched in my throat. Cade, I whispered, eyes wide. I couldn't move fast enough or scream loud enough. I couldn't move him in time. But someone did. Bethany. She moved before any of us could blink. She pushed Cade aside with all her strength, and the knife found her instead. I heard the sickening sound of metal tearing flesh. Bethany's body arched, then collapsed to her knees. The knife jutted from her side, coated in red, her hands fluttering weakly around it. No! I screamed, everything inside me collapsing at once. Cade caught her before she hit the ground, eyes wild with disbelief. Guards seized Winters within seconds, slamming him face first into the dirt, bloodied and snarling. But I didn't care. I didn't even look. All I could see was her, Bethany, my mother. My sweet girl, she murmured, barely able to lift her hand to brush my cheek. Don't cry. No, 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 I sobbed, dropping beside her, grasping her cold fingers between mine. Mom, please, you can't. Not now. You can't. This is how it should be, she whispered, eyes fluttering. It should have been me, not you. Tears streamed down my face as I shook my head. No, we had time. You said we had time. My time on this land. She took a shallow breath. It's not as long as yours. Make it yours, Arden. Make it yours. You still have time, I begged, my voice cracking. Just when I found you, please, please, not like this. She gave me a final soft smile, the kind I always wanted from a mother, the kind I'd waited my whole life for. And then her body went limp. Arden, it's been a week. One long, gray-skied, heavy-hearted week. Mr. Winters was arrested the same day with more than enough proof. The live stream, the testimonies and videos, the hidden passages in the cabin, and the army of students under his command, all of it was more than enough. He was disqualified instantly from the Praetor candidacy. His name was spat upon across the regions. The public didn't just turn their backs on him, they were disgusted, outraged, and rightfully so. Elite Order Academy shut down for a full week, a rare, unprecedented break. Students who sided with Winters were suspended, most of them expelled, and several were arrested for full involvement in his plans. Jaxon and Kieran were among them. I saw their parents on the news one afternoon, begging, crying, pleading for their freedom. But the law wasn't lenient, not when it was my mom who had enforced it. My chest tightened. My mom... Cade had continued with his candidacy despite everything. Every morning he left at dawn. He always left with soft kisses and long hugs, promising he'd be back by sundown. He kept that promise, every single day. No matter how busy or how complicated the rebuilding process had become, he always came back. Not once did he complain when I barely spoke. Not once did he flinch when I didn't smile. Tessa stayed with us too. She had been recovering quickly. Sometimes I'd hear her and Cade exchanging light banter in the living room, their laughter muffled by my closed door. But most of the time, it was quiet in the house. A soft knock broke the silence today. I turned to the door. Arden? It was Tessa's voice. Lunch? I hesitated, but then nodded. I wasn't sure if she sensed the nod, but she opened the door anyway. She walked in slowly, a tray in hand, her movements light. She set the tray on my bedside table and sat at the edge of my bed. Cade's numbers are looking good, she said softly. Really good. They're already calling him the People's Alpha. Even East and West territories are backing him more openly now. I smiled, or at least I think I did. My lips moved, but I didn't feel it. That's good, I murmured. She nodded, but I could feel the weight in her eyes. My mom was gone, buried far, far from me. I wasn't even there. I wasn't allowed to be. It was her will, her final wish, a remote funeral with no ceremony, and in turn, no closure. I didn't cry when they told me she had been buried, but grief is strange. It doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't come when you expect it. It creeps in during the in-betweens, the spaces between laughter, the seconds before sleep, the bite of cold wind on your cheek. These last 3 days, I felt it. What I'd lost, what could have been, what we could have had. You need to eat, Arden, Tessa murmured. I nodded. I forced myself to pick up the spoon. It felt like a mountain just to swallow a bite. I'll give you space, she said, standing. I watched her go. I waited until the door closed, and then I leaned back into my pillows, eyes shut tight. But there was no peace. There was no sleep. I don't even know how long I lay there in that state between waking and dreaming, until I felt the bed shift beside me. I opened my eyes. Cade was there, smiling softly. Hey, he whispered, brushing hair out of my face. The second I saw him, I broke down. I'm sorry, I whispered, the tears falling before I could stop them. I should be happy. I should be grateful, but I don't know how to feel anything right now. He didn't hesitate. Don't invalidate yourself, he said, gently wiping away the tears with his thumb. You've been through hell. You don't need to rush anything. I'm not going anywhere. I shook my head, the lump in my throat growing. Did your campaign go well today? I asked, trying to change the topic. He paused for a moment and then said quietly, I didn't go to a campaign today. I frowned. What? I skipped it. Why? I got you this, he said, and slowly opened his hand. In his palm was the necklace that used to hang around my mom's neck. I stared at it, the tears starting again in full force. I thought you might want to keep it, Cade said softly. I found it. I know it's not much, but I thought she'd want you to have it. I reached out with trembling fingers, curling them around the pendant. It was still warm and still smelled faintly like her. I miss her, I whispered. So much. I didn't even get to spend a long time with her, but I still missed her. I know, he said, pulling me into his arms. And this time, I didn't hold anything back. I let myself cry and fall apart. And Cade, as always, held me together. It was difficult to retrieve, Cade said gently, his voice breaking the silence that had wrapped around us like a blanket. But when I found a small slot in your treasure box, I knew I had to find it for you. My brows drew together. I lifted my gaze to meet his, but he was already looking at me. And I have an idea, he continued, holding out the necklace. Bethany wanted you to have this. I think she meant for it to lead you somewhere. Or to something. My heart stuttered. I turned to him slowly, swallowing. How? I whispered. Cade smiled softly, eyes warm but tired. I'll leave you for a while, baby, he said, brushing his lips against my forehead. You deserve to discover it yourself. And just like that, he left the room, his footsteps retreating down the hallway. For a moment, I just sat there, my heart thudding hard, unsure what to expect. My fingers moved on their own. I reached beside me and pulled the small box from the top drawer of my desk. I never noticed anything strange about it. Until now. I turned it over in my hand. There, barely noticeable, was a minuscule slot at the bottom. My breath hitched. He was right. There was a slot. When did he notice it? I never would have. Cade, I thought, heart swelling despite the ache. He was so attentive. My fingers trembled as I picked up the necklace. I turned it gently, feeling the soft edges of the stone, and slowly guided it toward the tiny slot in the bottom of the box. It slid in perfectly, and then it opened. Arden. The crest clicked open with a quiet sound, yet I felt it somewhere deep inside my chest. Inside was a folded piece of paper, creased with time, yellowed at the edges. My hand trembled as I retrieved it. The parchment was fragile between my fingertips, as though it had been waiting years to be read. I stared at it, unable to breathe. Should I? I wasn't ready. I didn't feel ready. But something in me whispered, "You have to." So I let out a breath and I opened it. Two handwritings, wild, messy, overlapping in places. One curving and fluid, the other sharp and angular, as if it were written in excitement and nervousness. But they looked happy, like love had spilled right out of their pens. "Hi, future son or daughter. We don't know your name yet, or if you're even born yet, or if you'll end up with your mom's stubbornness or my crooked nose. Hopefully neither. But if you're reading this, hello, sweetheart. You've made it. You're alive. You're ours. And already, we love you more than we know how to say." It's a strange time right now. The breaking is kicking our asses, pardon my language. Your mom will scold me if she ever reads this again. But it's the truth. We're trying to get this corrupt bastard out of office. He's not just bad, he's rotten all the way through. He's everything we don't want the world to be. But your mom, Beth, your mom is courage made flesh. You should see her. She's fire and earth and everything that stands its ground. She's out there every day, marching, leading, saving lives, fighting battles no one sees. I don't know how I got her. I really don't. We didn't think we'd make it, you know? We were from different worlds. We fought more than we talked at first, argued about everything. She hated my books, and I thought she was way out of my league. She still is. But somehow, some miracle, we fell in love. And it's the kind of love that quiets wars, the kind that builds homes from ruins, the kind I hope you'll find one day too. So when we found out you were coming, everything changed. Your mom cried, I laughed like an idiot. We both panicked, but we knew, without a doubt, that you were the most important thing we would ever do. Tears were in my eyes, causing my vision to blur, but I wiped them away, wanting to read and engrave every word into my brain. The handwriting then changed to the more angular one, which I presumed was my mom's. Don't listen to your father's yapping. Even my ears hurt sometimes when I listen to him. There might be a big bad war coming. I won't lie to you. We're doing everything we can to stop it, to keep it from touching you. But if it does, I promise you this. I will fight with you still inside me. I'll carry you through the fire if I have to. And I will never, never let the darkness take you. So for these 9 months, just support your mommy, okay? I know you'll be the best thing that's ever happened to her. You already are. And if by some cruel twist of fate we aren't there when you read this, please know we wanted to be. We planned to be. There hasn't been a single day since we found out about you that we didn't picture your first steps, your laugh, your everything. The world will be better for you, my child, and you will only get the best. We promise that. And in return, we only ask for one thing. Make this world kinder than you found it. Love fiercely. Fight for what's right. Hold on to joy with both hands. And never forget, you are our hope. You are what made all of this worth it. We love you so, so much. Love, your mom and dad, Beth and Patrick. The paper trembled in my hands, not because of the wind, but because I was shaking. I didn't even know I was crying until the first tear hit the ink, smudging the B in Beth. And she had written this for me. They both had. They loved me before they ever knew me. They dreamed of me, even in a war, and they tried so hard to give me something better. I clutched the letter to my chest, pressing it against my heart like it could somehow mend the aching gap left behind. Mom, Dad, I whispered into the quiet. The sob clawed out of me before I could stop it, tearing past my throat. My fingers curled over the letter, creased and worn and soaked through with tears. I don't know how long I sat there, knees tucked to my chest, shoulders shaking with every breath. I looked down again and saw them. Tiny, creased photographs tucked neatly beneath the letter, Polaroids, old-fashioned and grainy. My hands trembled as I picked them up one by one. There they were, my parents. It was similar to the photos I've seen in my mom's office when we first met. She still kept it after all these years, so I could imagine she loved my dad very much. One photo had my mom smiling widely with wind in her hair, her hand on her still flat belly. Another had my dad standing beside her with paint on his face like someone had tried and failed to do a nursery. The last one was when the two of them squished together in a close-up selfie, both of them laughing so hard that their eyes were almost closed. Behind them, the world was falling apart, but they looked like the only two people who had survived it. These were my real parents, and I had been taken from them. Why? How? Was it because of the breaking? Had they done it to protect me? I didn't know. Maybe I'd never know. But what I did know, what I knew down to the marrow of my bones, was that I had been loved. I had spent so much of my life thinking I wasn't, thinking I was some leftover, some burden, a mistake. But I wasn't. They had loved me before I even opened my eyes. They had written me letters, painted nurseries, taken photos. They had fought for me, and even if I lost them, even if they were gone, I had always been loved. The tears came harder. I cried silently, and when the sobs finally slowed, when my hands were too tired to hold on anymore, I gently folded the letter again. I tucked it back into the chest with the Polaroids and the necklace, and I stood. My legs were shaky, my eyes swollen, my heart too full to hold, but I stood. Barefoot, I ran out of the room, down the hall, toward the warm light spilling from the living room. My chest ached, but not in the same way as before. It ached like something trying to beat again. And there he was, Cade, standing by the counter, drinking water from a glass, his shirt rumpled, his hair still a mess. The moment his eyes landed on me, they widened. Arden, I ran to him, and he didn't hesitate. His arms opened wide like they'd been waiting for me all this time. I crashed into his chest, wrapped my arms around his waist, and held on. This man I love, this man I really, really love. Cade buried his face in my hair, one hand cradling the back of my head, the other wrapping tight around my waist. I need to make the most of life. That's what they would want, Mom and Dad. They would want me to live it fully, love deeply, and never let the darkness win. So I said the only thing that mattered. I love you, I whispered. Then again, louder, I love you. I pulled back just enough to look at him, eyes blurry with tears, my voice cracking as I said it over and over. I love you, Cade. I love you. I'm so glad you're my mate. His lips twitched into a soft smile, and he leaned down to gently kiss my forehead, so gentle I thought I might fall apart again. Me too, he murmured. Me too. He pulled me tighter into his chest. I'll make the world better for you, he whispered. And I sobbed. Because even when my parents weren't around anymore, Cade was there to make the world better. Not for me, but with me, Arden. The day of the elections finally arrived. Everything we worked for was going to be decided in just a few hours. The day came heavy with tension. I could feel it in the way Cade squeezed my hand that morning. For weeks, we gave it everything we had. Cade visited territories, answered every question, stood in front of every elder and child with that same steady conviction that made me fall in love with him. The South stayed silent throughout it all. We hadn't heard a whisper since Winters was arrested. Their territory remained tight-lipped, and Rowan, despite being casual with us, also felt detached. Still, we knew they wouldn't get in the way. The East was a different story. Elias's parents came forward. They held press conferences and town meetings and even addressed the academy directly. Their message was clear. The East was backing Cade. And then the West. When leadership was handed to a distant Trevane, one no one really expected to rise, people were skeptical. Alpha Abel Trevane. He wasn't like the rest of the Trevanes, not cut from that cold and polished cloth. Abel was the black sheep of the family, a quiet alpha in his early 30s who'd spent most of his life away from the Central Territories. People said he lived like a recluse. And then, out of nowhere, he emerged, took control, and the West surprisingly followed. He endorsed Cade instantly. The public then started to believe that this really was a new chapter. Now we were here, waiting. The Northern Auditorium was packed. All eyes were on the wide screens above the stage. Faces I'd come to know, students, campaign staff, friends, were all holding their breath. Even Honey, dressed in a pale yellow dress, stood tall beside us, her hands clasped tight. Cade's parents were there too. His mother was teary-eyed, his father stone-still but proud. A long day of counting, confirming, and deliberating was finally coming to an end. I held Cade's hand tighter. 1 minute. Then a voice echoed from the stage, reading off the final tallies. With 4 of the 4 territories in agreement and an uncontested lead in citizen and academic vote, we now formally declare the new Praetor of Fenra to be Cade Callahan. For a split second, no one moved. It didn't feel real. My heart slammed in my chest, and Cade just stared ahead, not breathing. Cheers, claps, screams, hands flying in the air, wolves standing on chairs filled the room. Honey gasped and clapped wildly, and Cade's mother wept into his father's shoulder. But before anyone else could reach him, Cade turned to me. His arms wrapped around my waist and lifted me off the ground and spun me in the air. I laughed and held on to him as tightly as I could. He pressed his forehead to mine, and just like that, it was official. Cade was the praetor of Fenra. I still couldn't believe it, me, the First Lady of Fenra, but here I was, standing tall beside Cade, the love of my life, as he was sworn in as the youngest praetor in our country's history. The grand hall of the United Factions was filled with wolves from all over the country, all gathered to witness a new beginning. The chairs were lined with embroidered symbols of every faction, flags hanging from the ceiling in their full colors. Cade's crest was finally raised among them, woven in silver and navy. Salvi, Bethany's old assistant, bald and somewhere in his mid-40s, met us at the entrance of the hall. His eyes were glassy as he shook our hands. "She would be proud," he said quietly. "So proud." I squeezed his hand back, feeling my throat tighten. "Thank you," I whispered. He stepped back, giving us space. When I finally took my seat at the very front, next to Honey, who looked stunning in a soft blue dress, my legs trembled just a little. This was really happening. Cade stood on the raised stage, the flags of Fenra behind him. His uniform was formal but not traditional. He refused the gold regalia and instead wore black and silver. The High Council elder stepped forward with an ancient scroll, voice echoing through the silent hall. "Cade Callahan, do you accept the oath of office?" Cade raised his right hand. "I do." "Do you swear to serve Fenra and its people, to guide without greed, to speak without fear, and to protect the lives of all under your watch?" "I do," Cade said firmly. "Then by the will of Fenra and the judgment of the people, you are now recognized as our praetor." Applause filled the chamber while Cade stepped forward to the podium. He looked at all of us before he spoke. "I want to thank everyone here," Cade began, "and I want to thank those who are no longer with us, because this victory is as much theirs as it is mine." A pause. "I know what a lot of you are thinking, that I'm young, that I still have much to learn, and you're right, I do. But I also know what it's like to fight for something without any assurance of winning. I know what it's like to lose people you love, and I know what it's like to be let down by those who were supposed to protect us." He looked at the flags behind him. "I won't make promises I can't keep. What I offer instead are plans." The room fell into a deep silence. "First, we will begin the process of identifying and removing those involved in the corruption tied to Mr. Winters and other past regimes. Not all corruption can be eradicated overnight, but we will not ignore it. We will not allow those who abuse their power to keep pretending they served you." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the audience. "Second," Cade continued, "I propose the construction of a communal sanctuary, built right at the intersection of our borders. Not a hospital, but a home, a place of rest and healing for wolves with sick cores, for those who have been ignored, neglected, or misunderstood." I smiled. That was for Honey, and for the others like her, lost in between territories, born with cores too delicate to thrive in life. Cade's eyes found Honey in the front row. She smiled so wide she might as well be the sun. "Third," he said, "our factions must no longer operate as enemies under a flag of peace. We need cooperation, not competition. I am requiring a monthly summit of leaders from every territory, no exceptions. We may be separate, but we should never be divided." A wave of applause followed. "Fourth," Cade said, and his voice deepened, "we will rebuild Elite Order Academy. I don't need to tell you what's wrong with the system. Some of you lived through it. You bled through it. Elite will no longer be a place for just the elite. It will be for the brightest, the most capable, and it will be free. No caps. No territory limits. If you make it, you belong." More applause followed. "We will improve the facilities. We will remove segregation. And most importantly, we will appoint a new headmaster." He paused and then smiled. I already knew what was coming. We talked about this decision all night, thinking who could be the best candidate. After a 2-hour-long talk, we finally came to one final candidate. His eyes scanned the crowd until they landed on her. And that would be Miss Lovely Loveson. There was a gasp. Miss Loveson looked stunned, her hand over her mouth as she turned to me from her row. I nodded slowly, holding back tears. She deserved it. She fostered growth, protected her students, and taught with heart, Cade said, and that's what the new elite will be built on. The applause was thunderous now, but Cade raised a hand, quieting the room one last time. These are only a few of the changes, he said, but I promise you this, while I stand here, I will carry the spirit of Bethany's spirit, he said, turning to me. My breath hitched because I wasn't expecting him to mention my mom. I read his speech yesterday and even proofread it, but he added this line only now. I smiled at him. She was once our hope, he continued, and I won't let that hope die, ever. Arden. The inauguration was over before I realized how much my cheeks hurt from smiling. Everywhere I turned, people were shaking Cade's hand, offering congratulations, telling him how they'd always believed he would win. I stood beside him, a little dazzled and still overwhelmed. I was mid-step toward him when someone new broke through the crowd. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a strong aura that could silence a room, and handsome. Like, dangerously handsome. The kind of handsome that makes you blink twice and wonder if you'd just imagined him. Daddy handsome. Not my type, of course. Cade was still the most handsome in my eyes. Cade noticed him too. He glanced at me, one eyebrow raised. The man smiled warmly at me before his gaze shifted to Cade. Congratulations, Prater, he said in a smooth, deep voice that carried just enough authority to demand attention without trying. Then his eyes came back to me. I'm Abel Trevane. My brow went up at the name. So this was Abel Trevane, the distant Trevane that replaced Jackson's family all at once? I could already tell he was much better than Jaxon. Please tell me if you need any support, he said. I'm for young leaders. I glanced at Cade and smiled before answering. Thank you, sir, Alpha, sir. That earned me a rich chuckle. Oh, please, Abel is fine. All right, Abel, I said, returning his smile and offering my hand. His grip was warm and firm. Beside me, Cade shifted, just enough for me to notice. When Abel moved on to greet someone else, I turned to Cade with a teasing smirk. You okay there? His brows knit together slightly. I'm fine. Oh, because you had that look, I said lightly, like maybe you were about to growl at him for breathing near me. I didn't growl, he said flatly. You wanted to growl, I pressed, enjoying myself far too much. He gave me a look that made me chuckle. I'm not jealous. Right, I said, nodding with exaggerated seriousness. Totally not jealous, just standing there like a thundercloud for fun. His jaw ticked. I wasn't. I grinned and leaned closer. Cade, you're adorable when you're pretending not to be territorial. He muttered something under his breath that I didn't catch, but I was sure it was not an agreement. I was about to tease him again when I caught a shift in the air around us. I followed the pull of it across the room. My stomach turned cold. They were here. The faces I had once known better than my own. The faces I had trained myself not to imagine. My family, except they weren't my family. Not anymore. Lorelei stood at the front, her expression bright, her posture as flawless as ever. Dominic was beside her, his easy smile almost exactly as I remembered. Cade's smile faded instantly. I couldn't move for a moment. My pulse thundered in my ears as Lorelei stepped forward. Who did you come here for? I asked before I could stop myself. You, Lorelei said without hesitation. Of course it's you, Dominic added, his tone dripping with pride. We're so proud. They chuckled softly, like this was some normal family reunion, like they could pretend the years of silence and absence hadn't existed. Lorelei stepped in, arms opening for a hug. Dominic moved in sync with her. I stepped back. What do you want? My voice was steady, colder than I thought it would be. Dominic's smile didn't falter. We want to talk. From the corner of my eye, Cade shifted closer and whispered so only I could hear. You don't have to if you don't want to. I pursed my lips. 100 answers ran through my mind, but in the end, I only muttered, I'll be quick. His eyes softened. He leaned in and pressed a brief kiss to my cheek. You can use my office, he said. I nodded once, forcing my shoulders back and my expression neutral. Follow me, I said to Lorelei and Dominic. And they did. The tables had turned, and for the first time in my life, they followed my word. I kept a poker face all throughout. What do you want? I snapped as soon as we were seated. Dominic flinched, and for a second, I thought he'd pretend not to hear me. But then Lorelei leaned forward, clutching her hands together like she thought her trembling would somehow make me soften. Arden, she began, But before she could spin whatever half-baked story she had ready, Dominic cut in. "We're here to ask that you release your brothers." I stared at them, the words hitting my ears but not my heart. Brothers. The term felt as empty as the people saying it. "They are your brothers," Lorelei echoed, her voice cracking on the word. "Please. Lucian and Kieran, they made mistakes, but—" "Mistakes," I scoffed. "Lucian was arrested for his involvement with Mr. Winters. Kieran was arrested for that too, plus school bullying. These aren't accidents. These aren't oops, my hand slipped into corruption moments. They'll serve their time in the detention center for years," Dominic said quickly. "But we thought you might be able to." "Help?" I cut in. "Oh, that's rich." Inside I laughed, cold and humorless. These two hadn't listened to me before. They hadn't believed me, hadn't even considered me their daughter most of the time. And now that the sons they actually cared about were caught in their own mess, suddenly I was useful? "You want that?" I asked. "Yes, daughter," Dominic said, leaning against the table and reaching out to hold my hand. It was cold, just as I remembered. I froze, the words striking something in me, though not in the way he probably hoped. My jaw clenched tight. "I'm not your daughter," I spat. Their eyes widened. Dominic's mouth opened, but no sound came. Lorelei looked at me like I had just torn the sky apart. "Tell me," I said, taking a slow step toward them. "Where the hell did you take me from?" Silence. Dominic and Lorelei glanced at each other, something tense passing between them. For a moment, I wondered if they would bolt, if they'd run back to whatever comfortable little lie they'd been living with for years. Finally, Dominic cleared his throat. "If we tell you," his voice faltered, but he forced it through gritted teeth. "Then will you free your brothers?" Raising my chin high, I looked him dead in the eyes. "Speak," I merely said. "Arden." Dominic and Lorelei turned to each other. I could see the silent exchange in their eyes, the unspoken question, "Do we tell her?" And the equally unspoken answer, "We have no choice." Dominic's lips parted, but Lorelei beat him to it. "Dominic is not my mate," she said. My frown deepened. It was something I'd always felt in the way they acted, but hearing it out loud still jarred me. I always thought they simply lacked love for each other. It never hit me that they weren't even bound in the way wolves were meant to be. "My mate's name is Patrick Elsher," Lorelei continued. The name hit me like a jolt. My breath caught in my throat. "Patrick? My dad?" "He was from the north," Lorelei said wistfully. "He came to the west to volunteer when there was a famine. He was a farmer, a simple man, a volunteer." I didn't need her to spell out the next part. My real parents had probably loved each other in a way Lorelei and Dominic couldn't comprehend. "My parents didn't want that," Lorelei went on. "They wanted me to be with Dominic. And it was the best decision I made," she said, turning to him with a small, polite smile. Dominic inclined his head, appearing triumphant. My stomach churned. I already knew I didn't like where this was going. "The breaking was happening," Lorelei explained, "and I needed someone strong. Dominic provided that." I cut in before I could stop myself. "Where am I in this story?" Dominic finally spoke. "When the breaking happened and the Grand War began, Bethany Spirit led it. She was the best warrior back then. Only a few knew she had just given birth." I stiffened. "She was strong," Dominic continued. "No one noticed her weakness. But in the long war, her enemies began to search for it. They wanted her to surrender and give up everything." His eyes met mine, not with guilt, but with the faintest hint of justification. "They discovered Patrick was her weakness, so he came to our family for protection." "He did?" I whispered. "Of course he did," Lorelei said smoothly. "We were an influential family back then. He was desperate. But," she added, "we didn't want that danger in our home. We had our own sons to think about. So instead," she waved her hand vaguely, "we brought you in, only you." I stared at her. Patrick was happy about it. She added quickly, "He wanted you to be safe. He knew the other factions wouldn't protect you the way we could." Her next words came casually, "But he was killed the next day." My throat burned, and I blinked rapidly to stop the sting in my eyes. My voice cracked when I asked, "And you didn't give me back?" Lorelei tilted her head, her expression soft but entirely lacking remorse. "You were better off with us. Besides, we always wanted a daughter." Dominic added, "And Lorelei wasn't fertile anymore." "You were a blessing, Arden." A blessing. That was what they called it. keeping me from the people who actually loved me. I covered my face with both hands for a moment, trying to breathe past the tightness in my chest. My parents had struggled through war, famine, and the political hellscape of Fenra, and these two had treated me like a convenient replacement child. Lorelei reached across the table, her voice dipping into that falsely sweet tone. "We gave you a good life, Arden. You owe us that much." I dropped my hands and stared at her. "Owe you?" "Yes," Dominic said firmly. "We kept you fed, clothed, and educated. We gave you a home. We treated you as our own. Surely you can find it in yourself to show some gratitude." "Exactly," Lorelei chimed in, her words tumbling over his. "We've given so much, and now you're in a position to give back. This is your chance to repay us." "Repay you?" My voice rose with each repetition. "For stealing me? For lying to me?" Lorelei sighed like I was being unreasonable. "For raising you. You wouldn't be where you are if it weren't for us." "And if we hadn't taken you in," Dominic said, "you might not even be alive right now. You wouldn't have had the opportunities we gave you." My nails dug into my palms. "You kept me from my mother." Lorelei's lips pressed into a thin line, but she didn't apologize. Instead, she leaned back and crossed her legs. "We did what was necessary, and now it's time for you to do the same for your family." "You're not my family," I said, my voice shaking with fury. Dominic's brow furrowed. "We are your family, whether you like it or not. Lucian and Kieran are your blood. They're your brothers, and they need you." I stared at them in disbelief. They still thought this conversation was about them. Lorelei spread her hands. "We've all made sacrifices, Arden. We've all done things we wish we hadn't. But family, real family, sticks together in the end." Something inside me snapped. "Enough!" I exclaimed. Both of them froze. I didn't lower my voice. I didn't soften my glare. I let the silence after my words hang heavy between us, making them feel just a fraction of the weight I had carried for years. I've heard enough. From that story, all I knew was that they only ever cared about themselves. Not me, not the others they'd stepped on to protect their own reputations. Just themselves and their precious sons. And now, after everything, they wanted to use me because I had power, because they finally saw worth in me when I could give them something. They tried to hold my gaze, but the guilt in their eyes was too shallow to mean anything. "So," Lorelei started off, "will you release your brothers now?" The room went still. They gazed at me with wide eyes, hoping I'd give in, soften, play the role of the grateful girl who owed them something. "My answer's no," I continued. "Your sons are old enough to face what they've done." With that, I stood. Their expressions twisted, the guilt vanishing into outrage. "You told us you'd help," Lorelei snapped. "Yes, and now you're backing out?" Dominic hissed, pointing a trembling finger at me. "Selfish," Lorelei spat. "We cared for you. You never cared for me." I cut in, but they didn't stop. "You're ungrateful. Do you think you'd be standing here without us? Is this the thanks we get?" They kept talking over each other, voices piling into a messy storm. The door opened. Cade stepped inside, his presence instantly calming me down. His gaze swept the scene. "What's happening here?" he asked. They didn't answer him directly. Instead, they whirled on him. "She's going back on her word," Dominic said. "We raised her, and now she's throwing us away." "She's abandoning family," Lorelei wailed dramatically. Cade's eyes went to me, silently asking if I wanted him to deal with this. I shook my head. This was mine to finish. I took a step forward, forcing them to quiet down. "You want the truth?" I said. "You are nothing to me now. Whatever ties we had ended a long time ago, and this," I gestured between us, "this is your retribution. For every time you turned your back, for every time you put yourselves and your sons above anyone else. You made your choice back then. I'm making mine now." Their mouths opened, but I didn't let them speak. "I don't want to see you again," I said, "ever." That silence was the kind I'd been waiting for. Salvi appeared at the door with 2 security officers. "Take them out," I told him. They erupted again, shrieking, calling me heartless, swearing I'd regret this. Security moved in, guiding them toward the door, but they kept twisting back to throw more words at me. When the door finally shut and their voices were gone, I let out a slow, heavy breath. It was done. I had cut the last threads tying me to the past. Arden. I didn't think it would be this stressful. Miss Loveson came with another announcement that we had another week off for more preparation, so fortunately I didn't have to go back to Elite just yet. A full week to rest, breathing, and maybe even get back to some sort of normal. Cade, on the other hand, wouldn't be coming back with me because of his duties. With great power truly came great responsibility, and in Cade's case, the responsibility seemed endless. He had so much to do, and so did I. There was a mountain of work, literal piles of documents, schedules, and endless messages from people asking for help, advice, or approval. Cade, of course, insisted he would do it all on his own. He'd given me that stubborn look of his, the one that said, "You're not touching this, Arden," in the most loving yet infuriating way possible. Naturally, I ignored him. So there we were, spending almost every waking hour sorting through work. We did it side by side, sometimes in comfortable silence, other times with soft music in the background. And while I didn't mind the productivity, my body was aching. My back, my shoulders, my wrists, even my eyes felt sore from staring at so many papers and screens. But it wasn't just physical tiredness that was getting to me. We hadn't done it in a while. My wolf had been whining about it for days now, a persistent plea in the back of my mind that only grew louder whenever Cade leaned close or brushed his hand against mine. But of course, I couldn't just say it out loud. What was I supposed to do? Walk up to him and declare, "Hey Cade, my wolf's losing her mind because you haven't touched me in weeks?" No, absolutely not. I could already imagine the smirk he'd give me, the teasing, the smug satisfaction of knowing I was the one begging for it. Still, it really had been a while. My wolf was growing impatient. So I decided, well, maybe decided is too strong a word, more like I convinced myself that I should prepare, just in case. I started by taking the longest shower I'd had in weeks, scrubbing everything and everywhere like my life depended on it. I even exfoliated and shaved everywhere, which is something I only do when I'm feeling particularly motivated. Then came the perfume. Not just a little spritz, but a careful mist over my pulse points, the inside of my wrists, the back of my neck. By the time I was done, I felt ridiculous. I mean, who does this? Who lies in wait like some lovesick maiden in a romance novel? Me, apparently. I put on a robe, a single silk robe that left little room for imagination. Then I lay down on the bed, arranging myself in what I hoped was a casual, natural position, but was probably the most awkward attempt at looking seductive in history. My heart was thudding in my chest, and my wolf was practically pacing inside me. I can't believe I'm doing this, I thought. I can't believe I'm actually lying here like some waiting. That's when I heard the door. Cade was back. He'd left earlier to handle something urgent. One of the East Territories had been flooded, and he wanted to be there in person to check on the situation. That was Cade for you. I sat up a little, trying not to look too eager, which was a mistake because my robe slipped slightly off one shoulder. My wolf approved. I could hear him moving around in the other room, his voice low as he said something to one of his aides. Then the sound of the shower turning on followed. My heart sped up. Water pattered against tile. My mind instantly went places it shouldn't. Minutes passed, minutes that felt like hours, until I heard the water shut off. My wolf was clawing at me now, restless, urging me to get up, to go to him, to join him in the waters. No, I would wait. The door finally opened, and Cade stepped out in sweatpants and a loose t-shirt, his damp hair curling slightly at the ends. There was something about the way droplets clung to his skin that made my breath catch. He noticed me and smiled. "Hey," he said softly, walking toward the bed. "Hey," I echoed, my voice smaller than I expected. He leaned down and kissed me, just a soft, lingering brush of his lips. Then he pulled back slightly, his eyes narrowing just a fraction. "Do you have perfume on?" he asked. "Yes," I squeaked before I could stop myself. His lips curved. He leaned in closer, and my wolf howled in anticipation. This was it. This was finally it. I puckered my lips, closing my eyes just enough to feel his breath brushing against them, my body tensing, my skin prickling with heat. But nothing happened. Cade pulled me closer, his arms circling around my waist. I could feel the heat radiating from him through the thin fabric of my robe, his breath brushing against my ear. "I like your natural scent better," he murmured. I pursed my lips. I was dripping wet, and he wasn't doing anything. His fingers idly traced circles on my side, and I felt like I was melting into a puddle on the bed. I waited for something. But Cade just held me, his eyes closing and breath slowing down. I even grazed my hand along his thigh, lightly at first, then a little higher, testing the waters. The disappointment was ridiculous. I sighed, tipping my head back against the pillow. Was I seriously the only one here craving more? He just smiled faintly, eyes half-lidded. The nerve of this man. I'd even curled my hair. The silence stretched, broken only by the steady beat of his heart against my back. He was already sleeping. Was I really the only one who wanted this? Arden. I woke up and Cade wasn't there anymore. I stared at the window and the sun was already sinking. What? I mumbled to myself, sitting up and clutching the edge of the blanket. I slept that long? Maybe I was more exhausted than I thought. Maybe all the long days of work and nights of tossing and turning, wanting Cade, finally caught up to me. On the nightstand was a folded note and a tray of food. I reached for the note first. In Cade's handwriting were the words, "Had to head back to the east. Flood work still not done. I didn't want to wake you. Rest well, baby." Below the words was a tiny doodle of what looked like a smiling wolf giving me a thumbs up. I rolled my eyes but couldn't stop my lips from twitching. He left breakfast in bed, or, well, early dinner at this point. There were fresh berries, slices of pineapple, and a flaky pastry now cold but still smelling divine. My wolf stirred at the sight of the food, like somehow the pineapple was an invitation to rip his clothes off. My heat wasn't coming. I knew my cycle well enough to know that, but just the thought of Cade bringing this to me, thinking about me, it was ridiculous how my body reacted. I picked up a strawberry, biting into it. The sweet juice burst in my mouth, and my thighs pressed together on instinct. I set it back down before I did something embarrassing. And yes, something embarrassing included touching myself right then and there. But before my hand could even make it under the blanket, the door burst open. "Finally awake, Sleeping Beauty?" "Tessa!" I yelped, jerking the blanket up to my chin. "Can you knock?" Her eyebrows shot up, and then she smirked, causing my stomach to drop. "You seem suspicious," she said slowly. "I'm not suspicious," I said too quickly. She tilted her head, eyes narrowing slightly before a slow, devilish grin crept onto her face. "Well, I can smell your arousal." I choked on my own saliva. "Tessa!" "What? I'm just saying." She held up her hands in mock innocence, but her eyes were sparkling with amusement. I groaned, pulling the blanket tighter. My wolf was practically growling at the interruption. Tessa let out a sigh, the smirk fading. "Must be nice," she teased, but even then I found a softness in her words. I frowned, the teasing moment slipping away. "Rowan still hasn't contacted you?" Her lips pressed into a thin line. She shook her head. "He has no reason to." The words were said like it didn't bother her, but the way her fingers fidgeted told a different story. Then she hesitated to speak, but eventually asked, "Is it really that he was the one who gave me the antidote, and waited for me to wake up?" "Yes," I muttered. Silence lingered between us for a moment. Then curiosity got the better of me. "You said you weren't a virgin, right? Back at Elite, I was the only one who—" "Yes," she cut in before I finished my question, a faint flush forming on her cheeks. I squinted at her. "So who was it? I know you're not the type to just do it with anyone." Her blush deepened, and she looked anywhere but at me. My eyes widened. "It's Rowan, isn't it?" Her head snapped up, eyes narrowing in instant denial. She stood abruptly, shaking her head. "No." But the redness in her cheeks told me otherwise. Before I could press, she grabbed something from the table and set it in my lap, a medium-sized, elegant box wrapped in gold paper. "Just chocolates," she said quickly, still avoiding my gaze. "Cade wanted to give you these. He forgot to leave them here. He said to eat only one at a time." "Wait," but she was already halfway to the door. "Tessa, answer the question." "Nope," she said, voice higher than usual, before slamming the door shut behind her. The room fell silent again. I pouted, looking down at the box. "Only one at a time? Why? That's cruel." Without thinking, I tore the ribbon off and popped the lid open. They smelled amazing, rich chocolate with a hint of something fruity. Cade always picked the best. I stress ate the first one instantly, savoring the smooth melt on my tongue. And then, well, I wasn't going to just not eat another. So I ate another, and another. By the time I realized I'd eaten half the box, I was leaning back against the pillows, lips smeared with chocolate, wondering what kind of stupid rule only one at a time was supposed to be. I was going to find out soon enough. I continued to eat. Every bite melted into my tongue like silk until my head started buzzing. I could barely keep my eyes open between bites, but my body kept moving on instinct, reaching for the next piece of chocolate. Somewhere between the 12th piece, I realized I was swaying. My thoughts were loose and blurry, and the warmth in my chest made me giggle for no reason at all. I felt ridiculous. The skies were dark when I finally ate them all. Just then, the door opened. I could smell Cade's scent, causing me to smile, but I pouted again when I realized he left me hanging yesterday night. "Baby, don't call me that," I exclaimed before I could stop myself. "I mean, I miss you." I quickly added. He froze mid-step, eyebrows raised. "I miss you so much," I blurted, my throat tightening. "I want your body. I want to do those things," I continued, unable to stop myself. "You know what I mean." Cade's mouth twitched like he was holding back laughter. He stepped closer, his presence filling the air. "You don't want me now, do you?" I asked, staring at him through half-lidded eyes. "Your wolf found somebody else?" His chest shook with quiet laughter, and he shook his head. "I told you to eat only one." His gaze flicked to the now empty box on the table. "You ate it all?" I crossed my arms, but my coordination was questionable at best. "Don't tell me what to do," I mumbled, my words slurring. "You can't even satisfy me with your body." His eyes narrowed slightly, though the smirk didn't fade. "Oh, you want my body?" he asked. "Of course," I declared, planting my hands on my hips for emphasis. "Give it to me now. Give it." The last part came out more like a plea than a demand. "You will have it," Cade muttered, leaning closer, his voice dropping to that dangerous whisper that made my skin tingle. "But not now. Not when you're drunk." I pouted, swaying slightly toward him. "I'm not drunk." "You're drunk off chocolate," he corrected, looking far too amused for my dignity's sake. "I made sure to finish all my work for the next week for this, and it's worth it. I didn't think you would want me this way." His gaze softened, though that smirk still played at his lips. "You should have told me, baby." "What?" I asked, confused, my brain trying to catch up but failing. "Sleep, baby," he said, brushing his knuckles over my cheek. "Tomorrow I'll show you a new world." Arden. My head felt like someone had stuffed it with clouds, then set the clouds on fire. I didn't know what to do with myself. My thoughts were slow, dragging themselves through my brain. I couldn't even remember how I fell asleep. Then I remembered the dream. In it, oh God, I had actually professed that I missed Cade's body. It was a nightmare, an actual nightmare. I sighed in relief, pressing a hand to my face. It was just a dream. It wasn't real. I could still face him with dignity. I yawned and rolled over, seeing my mate standing shirtless on the balcony. The early light spilled over his skin, highlighting every muscle. His hair was a little messy, his expression easy, and when he turned and caught me staring, he smiled. I gulped. "Delicious." "Had a great sleep?" he asked, leaning against the railing like he didn't know he was committing a crime just by existing like that. I nodded wordlessly. Talking seemed dangerous. "You don't have any work?" I finally managed. "Nope." His lips twitched. "You still want my body now?" My eyes went wide. My heart plummeted straight through the floor. "What?" He chuckled, enjoying himself. "You know, you were very vocal last night about certain things." Heat rushed to my cheeks so fast I thought I'd pass out. "It wasn't actually a dream?" "That was the alcohol talking," I justified, pushing the blanket over my head, but his laugh followed me under it. "Why would you even give me those chocolates?" "I didn't even know they'd hit you like that," he said, sitting on the bed. "I mean, you're a werewolf, baby. Why are you such a lightweight?" I peeked out from under the blanket, just enough to glare at him. "Not everyone is blessed, Cade," he grinned. "I'd say you're pretty blessed. You have me," I groaned. "Just go to work." "I told you, I don't have work." "What do you mean you don't have work?" I narrowed my eyes. "You're Cade the Praetor. You always have work." He leaned closer, bracing one hand on the bed so his face was just inches from mine. "I finished it." I frowned in confusion. "What?" "I finished all of my work for the week," he said with a small smile. "So we can take a vacation." I stared at him. "You? What?" I wanted to bring you on it once everything was over, he continued, brushing a strand of hair away from my face. But there was so much to do, so I had to resort to other methods. I'm sorry I couldn't bring you sooner, he whispered. So all that work, those endless piles, the late nights, the constant meetings, he'd been killing himself to clear it all. For me? That's why you had a mountain load of work? I asked softly. He just smiled, not answering, but I already knew. That's so sweet, I admitted, and for a moment I forgot how to breathe properly. Then Cade stood, casual as ever. I've already packed your bags. I shot upright. What do you mean? I packed your bags, he repeated. All you have to do is get ready for me, baby. Ready for you? I echoed, suspicious. He leaned down, his voice dropping into that tone that made my wolf sit up straight. And then, his lips brushed my ear, I'll show you the new world I was talking about. The same new world he'd promised last night when I was drunk. Only now, I was very much sober, and suddenly, I wasn't sure if that was a good thing or a bad thing. I can't believe it, I muttered under my breath, still in awe. We're actually going on a vacation. The road blurred by as Cade drove, his eyes fixed ahead, one hand on the wheel, the other resting casually on his thigh. Is it really all right to leave your duties like this? I finally asked, my voice softer than I intended. He didn't even glance at me. He just nodded, calm and certain. The flood situation's been resolved. In case of emergencies, Salvi's there. He'll contact me if anything happens. I smiled faintly, the tension in my shoulders easing just enough for me to reach over and take his hand. His palm was warm, his fingers immediately clasping around mine like they'd been waiting for the contact. You excited? He asked, a tiny smile playing at his lips as he gave my hand a squeeze. Very, I said without hesitation. We drove in that comfortable silence that was becoming more and more familiar between us, until the road widened into a coastal area, and my breath caught. The scent of salt hit me first, followed by the glimmer of water under the sunlight. Behind it all was a port. Rows of ships swayed gently, but one in particular stood out, a large white yacht. What? I turned to him sharply. Where are we going? Not far, Cade said, just to Yelark. My jaw dropped. Yelark? He nodded once. I gasped before I could stop myself. Yelark, the adjacent island, known for its endless beaches and beautiful landscapes. Mostly humans lived there, humans who had no idea that werewolves like us existed. To them, Fenra was just wolf country, some quaint rural place with a lot of wildlife. They had no idea about the packs, the politics, and the centuries of history hidden just across the water. Ignorance is bliss, they always said. Yelark is beautiful, I whispered, my voice reverent as my mind filled with images of white sand and turquoise waves. And we're going on this yacht? He smiled, and there was something in that smile that made my heart do a strange little somersault. It'll take around a day, on the ocean, with Cade. I could only nod, my excitement building into something warm and dizzying. I followed him up the ramp, my sandals clicking faintly against the metal before giving way to the smooth wooden deck. Inside, the air was cooler, scented faintly with polished wood and the salt of the sea drifting through the open windows. I barely had time to take it all in, because the moment I stepped fully inside, Cade was there, pressing me back against the wall, his arms caging me. His eyes locked on mine, and they weren't soft anymore. Time to give you what you want, he murmured. The yacht rocked gently beneath us. The ocean stretched endlessly outside the glass walls, glimmering in the midday light, but Cade had me backed against the wall of the majestic room. His nearness was a tide all its own, pulling me under. Cade, wait, I blurted, pressing my palms against his chest in a poor attempt to slow him down. We haven't even seen everything yet. My voice sounded breathless, needy in a way I didn't intend. I'll let you see it later, he murmured. Right now, there's something else I want to see. My eyes widened when he pulled me toward the bed, going on top of me and caging my head between his arms. Our bodies were dangerously close, and I found myself aching for him even more. You might think you only want my body, but you have no idea, baby. I've been holding back. His hand slid to the small of my back, pulling me flush against him. Every damn moment in the office, I keep thinking about you, about how to pleasure you, in ways you haven't even imagined yet. My breath hitched. The warmth in his gaze felt like he was possessing me without shame. You must have missed me, he said, his fingers moving to the buttons of my blouse. One popped open, then another. I felt the brush of his knuckles against my skin, and my body shook in response. "Cade," I started, but my voice faltered as his gaze dipped to where his hands were parting the fabric. "So," he said, eyes lifting to meet mine again, voice thick with hunger, "let me worship you." Crap. How could I say no to that? With my blouse fully unbuttoned, he straightened and tugged his shirt over his head, tossing it onto the floor and sliding off his pants. In this small space, I could feel that my arousal triumphed over every scent. Arden. When we first started, it was still bright. The sunlight poured through the windows and wrapped us in its golden warmth. But now, it was dark. The soft rocking of the yacht was the only sound beyond my own breathing. Somewhere below us, the driver was asleep in his chamber. Cade and I were out on the deck, both of us wrapped in robes, or mostly wrapped. Only, from the look in his eyes, I had the distinct feeling that Cade had another idea entirely. "Cade," I muttered, eyeing the mischievous glint on his face. Maybe I regretted telling him earlier that I'd missed his body, because, truth be told, he'd taken that as a personal challenge. He was relentless. A monster, really. A monster in the most maddening, unfairly irresistible way. "It's a full moon tonight," he murmured. I turned to him, startled, my eyes going wide. There was a symbolism to the full moon. Perhaps we were finally going to mark each other? "Yup," he answered, even though I didn't pose a question. My eyes widened even more. "We haven't even completed the mate bond yet. How could you?" "Read your mind?" He smirked, brushing a finger over my cheek. "That's because you're an open book to me now." I swallowed. "So even without the mate link, I have an inkling of what you're thinking," he finished, his low chuckle brushing warm against my ear. I should have been annoyed at how smug he sounded, but instead, my heartbeat picked up. "But before that," he added, leaning back slightly, "don't you want to feel what it's like to fuck in the middle of the ocean?" My eyes nearly fell out of my head. "What are you talking about?" He tilted his head as though I was missing the obvious. I slapped my hand to my chest. "The captain. He's asleep," Cade said. "We'll be setting off again tomorrow morning. It's too dark to travel now. Besides," his lips curved, "there's no one here." "Still," I blurted. "We're out in the open." His gaze locked with mine, unwavering. "Is that a no?" I bit my lip. The sea breeze tugged at the edges of my robe, sending a shiver over my skin. His eyes didn't waver, and the thought of refusing him suddenly seemed impossible. It wasn't a no. It wasn't even close to a no. I let out a small, frustrated groan. "You're impossible." Before he could reply, I leaned forward, closing the distance, and pressed my lips to his. He pushed my shoulder. "Hold on to the railing," he said, his hand brushing against the edge of the robe. "I'm not stopping even when another yacht passes by," he whispered, causing my eyes to widen. I could hear the snores of the captain from where we were. The moonlight spilled through from the sky, turning the sea into a shimmering mirror. Cade's mouth lowered to the curve of my neck, his lips brushing softly at first before his teeth sank into my skin. The bite was sharp, pleasure flooding my veins until my knees nearly buckled. A warm rush pulsed from the mark, threading through every inch of me, binding me tighter to him than any chain ever could. My heart was a wild drum in my chest. I turned in his hold, breathless, the taste of him still lingering on my tongue from moments before. I didn't think. I just leaned in and let instinct guide me, pressing my lips to the strong line of his throat, finding that one spot where his pulse thundered beneath skin. My teeth grazed, then sank in, claiming him, branding him the way he'd just branded me. The full moon watched from above, blessing what we were with its silver light. All shame, all restraint slipped away like the tide. I felt nothing but the rightness of it, of him. "Mate," I whispered. "Mate, baby," he breathed back, and then he pulled me against him, sealing us together. "Cade." "We're near, sir. Only a few minutes more," the captain said, his voice carrying easily over the soft splash of water against the hull. "Thank you," I replied, leaning back slightly. "First time in Elark?" the captain asked. I shook my head. "No." My gaze drifted to the horizon, the faint outline of the island coming into focus. "But it's our first time together." The captain smiled knowingly. "Well, you might put a ring on it. Elark is known for everlasting marriages." I couldn't help the small smile tugging at my lips. "One day," I said quietly, more to myself than to him. The man's eyes crinkled with amusement, but he turned back to his chamber, humming under his breath. I pushed myself up from the bench and made my way to our room. The floor swayed gently with the rhythm of the water, but I barely noticed. My focus was already on her. The door creaked softly as I stepped inside, and I saw my other half. She was sprawled on the bed in the most unguarded way, hair spilling across the pillow, one hand resting just above her head. There was something about seeing her like this that gripped me tighter than any battle ever could. She was mine, marked and bound to me, and I wanted to savor every heartbeat of that truth. I thought about waking her, not because we had to, but because I wanted her again. The memory of last night, the way she'd given herself to me completely, made something primal stir inside me. She was irresistible, every curve, every sound, every look. But I had mercy, of course. I wasn't insatiable. So instead, I sat down on the edge of the bed, careful not to jostle her. I could watch her for hours, and maybe I would if time allowed. My fingers itched to touch her, but I kept them still for a moment, simply letting my eyes take her in. Leaning forward, I placed a gentle kiss on her forehead. She shifted slightly, murmuring something under her breath, and my eyes drifted lower to her mark. It was a storm. It suited her perfectly. She was calm in the heart of the storm, and yet she could summon lightning when she needed to. My storm. My anchor. I pressed my lips to it, letting them linger. She made a soft, unconscious moan in response, and it sent a shiver down my spine, heat rushing through me like wildfire. Every instinct screamed at me to take her again, to feel her beneath me one more time. Behave, Cade. I forced myself to breathe evenly, to remember that there was more to this moment than giving in to the pull between us. Her lashes fluttered, and then those eyes, those beautiful, soul-striking eyes, met mine. Awake, they were even more breathtaking, like they'd stolen light from the ocean itself. "We're near," I whispered. She blinked slowly, then straightened with a small wince. My brows knit together before I could stop myself. She was sore. My fault. My ego liked that, but the rest of me just wanted her to feel comfortable. "I need to get dressed," she said, already pushing herself upright. "I'll help you," I offered immediately, a grin playing at my lips. "No," she exclaimed, eyes wide, and shoved at my shoulder until I stumbled off the bed. I laughed, letting her push me toward the door like an unruly wolf pup. "Fine, fine," I chuckled, holding my hands up in surrender as she threw me out of the room. The door shut in my face, but I was still smiling. Finally, after a few minutes, we had arrived. Arden still looked sore, but she didn't want to admit to it. I knew it, though. I could feel her annoyance through our mate link. Her brows were knitted, her lips slightly pursed, and every time her gaze flicked to me, there was that little glare. It was cute. Infuriatingly cute. We started walking down the steps of the terminal, my stride automatically shortening to match hers. I had all the bags, of course, not because she wasn't capable, but because right now, she could barely keep herself upright without swaying. She still hadn't recovered from the rigorous exercise last night, and as much as she insisted she was fine, I still wanted to treat her like a princess. The crowd was modest for this hour, mostly humans, but I still noticed their attention when we passed through. Heads turned. Conversations paused. Eyes trailed after us with curiosity. "Fenra?" one of them asked, a man with graying hair and an inquisitive look. Arden, ever polite, straightened a little despite the discomfort. "Yes, sir." "How did you know?" I asked him, raising a brow. He grinned knowingly. "Good-looking people are from Fenra. I don't know what's in the food over there. I might consider moving there myself." I huffed a laugh, and Arden let out a small chuckle, too. It was light, but her steps were still slow, her balance slightly off. I clicked my tongue. Enough of this. Before she could question me, I shifted the weight of the bags all to one arm, slipped the other under her knees, and lifted her clean off the ground in a princess carry. She froze. The heads that had already been glancing at us before were now full-on staring. A few gasps and a couple of surprised laughs followed. "Oh, look at them! That's adorable. She must be his girlfriend. Or wife. Definitely his wife." Arden's cheeks turned the shade of ripe berries. "Cade," she hissed under her breath, her hands bracing awkwardly against my chest, pushing me away. I smirked down at her. "What? My arms work fine. I might as well use them." She gave me an embarrassed look. You're ridiculous. They're staring at us. Let them. We're not from here anyway, I countered, deliberately tightening my hold around her. That earned a ripple of more coos and a few dreamy sighs from nearby onlookers. Arden ducked her face toward my shoulder, probably hoping to hide from their amused attention. Sweet little thing. She could glare all she wanted, but she wasn't asking me to put her down. We made our way through the murmurs and the glances. The scent of her shampoo, mixed with the faint trace of my scent, made me smile. It was hard to care about the stares when all I wanted was to make sure she got to the car without one more ounce of strain. When we finally stepped out into the cooler air, the car was waiting right at the curb, a black limousine. The driver, in a crisp suit, stepped forward to open the rear door. Arden tilted her head to look at it, then turned back to me with a frown. Seriously? A limousine? She shook her head. Why did you splurge so much? I shifted her weight slightly in my arms, offering her a slow grin. Only the best for my baby. Arden. My heart had been fluttering ever since we arrived. There was something about Ilark that felt pleasant. The air carried a salty freshness from the sea. The cobblestone streets weren't so quiet, and the people, though curious, seemed kind. I liked Fenra, of course. It's my home after all. However, with Cade's recent win, I couldn't deny that our actions were now under public scrutiny. Here, no one knew us. Although humans didn't have the best reputations in the entire world, they do quite a lot of stupid and unreasonable stuff. Along with that, some of them were convinced that shifters truly existed, and some wanted to hunt us down or to make trophies of our kind. They never truly succeeded. Fenra wolves, and I guess those from other shifter countries, were too disciplined for that. We didn't shift in open spaces, unless you went to designated shifting grounds or stumbled upon the deep forests, which were heavily guarded by each faction. Still, being here, in a place where I could walk freely without suspicion, was refreshing, and being here with Cade, after we'd sealed the mate bond, was even better. Do you want a round before we go out? Cade's deep voice pulled me from my thoughts. I looked toward the bathroom, and he was leaning casually against the doorway, wearing nothing but a towel wrapped low around his hips. Droplets of water still clung to his skin, tracing slow paths down the lines of his chest. We were in this enormous hotel room that Cade swore was affordable, though I doubted it. How could a 5-star hotel possibly be affordable? For a second, I considered his offer. My eyes roamed his frame, my heartbeat quickening. He was devastating like this. Fresh from a shower, looking at me like I was the only thing he wanted to devour. But I was already dressed. My hair was in place, my linen dress felt light against my skin, and this was my first time in Ilark. I wanted to explore every corner, taste every flavor, breathe in every scent, even if the most tempting view in the world was standing in front of me half naked. I do want to explore your body, I muttered under my breath before catching myself. Nope, bad Arden. I forced my gaze away and grabbed my small purse. We're going out before you distract me again, I said. He smirked knowingly, but he didn't press further. We left the hotel, stepping into the bright afternoon. Cade was dressed in a white polo, sleeves rolled up just enough to show the veins on his forearms. My linen dress swayed lightly around my knees as we walked. As always, the stares followed. I felt them, the curious glances, the way conversations seemed to pause as we passed. My cheeks heated, but Cade didn't seem to mind in the slightest. If anything, his hand on the small of my back grew more possessive, as if telling the world, yes, she's mine. Our steps eventually brought us to a charming little cafe tucked between a bookshop and a flower stand. It had outdoor seating shaded by wide cream-colored umbrellas, with pots of bright flowers climbing the iron railings. The scent of freshly baked bread and rich coffee drifted from the open windows. I stopped in my tracks, eyes widening. This is perfect. Cade glanced at me with a small grin. Better than any fancy restaurant? Far better, I admitted. He guided me toward one of the tables and pulled out a chair for me. The seat was warm from the sun, and the soft chatter of other patrons made the whole atmosphere feel cozy and alive. I'll go order, Cade said, straightening. The pistachio brioche and a hot chocolate, I sent through our mate link, my voice brushing against his mind. I could see from the transparent glass how his lips twitched upward. Got it, baby. I smiled to myself as he walked toward the counter. It was still new, this ability to link our minds, but I loved it already. It felt intimate, like having a secret passageway just for us, one no one else could enter. A few minutes later, Cade returned with a small tray. The pistachio brioche was golden and dusted with sugar, the filling peeking through where it had been sliced. The hot chocolate steamed invitingly in its cup, topped with a swirl of cream. He set them in front of me and then sat down with his own coffee and some kind of savory pastry. His gaze lingered on me as I took my first sip, and the warmth of it seeped all the way down to my chest. "You're happy?" he asked softly. I met his eyes and nodded. "I am." He leaned back, the sunlight catching the edge of his smile. "I'm happy too." We ate in the kind of peace I didn't think could exist after everything that had happened. Cade sat close enough that his knee brushed mine every so often, a quiet reminder that he was here. I tore another piece of bread and glanced at him. "You aren't tired at all after, well, everything?" How he could fuck me after all those endless paperwork and meetings were beyond me. He was chewing slowly, his eyes on me instead of the food. "How can I be tired," he said simply, "when my rest is you?" I paused mid-bite, squinting at him. "That is absurdly cheesy." I meant it. I narrowed my eyes, but the corners of my mouth betrayed me, twitching upward. He chuckled low in his throat, and I shook my head, pretending to return my attention to my plate. The sun was higher now, warm enough that its brightness made me squint against the light. I lifted my hand to shade my eyes as I tore another bite from my bread, only to notice that the sudden glare had disappeared. I blinked and turned my head. Cade was seated closer to me now, his shadow falling over me. "What are you doing?" I asked, a laugh in my voice. He only crossed his arms, tilting his head, blocking the sun. I chuckled, shaking my head. "I didn't think you would be this much of a romantic." Cade pursed his lips, the smallest smirk tugging at the edge. I smiled, softer this time, and returned to eating. It was comfortable, his presence there. Just the sound of our breaths and the distant hum of the world going on without us. That was when I heard small footsteps pattering over the grass. I looked up to find 3 children standing a few feet away, huddled close together. One of them, a little girl with braids tied in yellow ribbons, broke away from the others and marched forward with all the determination in the world. "You're so pretty, miss," she blurted, her voice high and breathless with excitement. "Arden." My eyes widened. I hadn't expected such a direct compliment in this town, especially from a child. Compliments from children were different. They had no hidden agenda and no layered flattery. So, when a child complimented you, it felt more real. I couldn't help but smile as I leaned down, close enough to meet her bright gaze. Her yellow ribbons swayed as I reached out and gave one a gentle tug. "You're even prettier," I told her. Her cheeks flushed a deep rose, and she let out a shy giggle before rocking back on her heels. "What are your names?" I asked, noticing movement behind her. The other 2 children, both boys, had wandered closer, peeking out from behind her. The little girl straightened her back proudly. "I'm Vivery," she announced. I nodded, turning my gaze to the boys. "And you two?" "I'm Jaron," the older one said, his voice slightly deeper but still holding that youthful tone. The youngest, who had messy dark hair sticking up in every direction, grinned mischievously. "I'm Milo." "Are you siblings?" I asked, tilting my head. Vivori shook her head so hard her ribbons bounced. "No, we're friends. Someone's babysitting us." Just then, a voice called out from behind them, followed by quick footsteps. A young woman emerged from the cafe, her features striking in a way that drew the eye instantly. She was undeniably pretty, with soft brown hair tied into a loose braid and a sundress that swayed with each hurried step. "Oh goodness, I'm so sorry," she said breathlessly, ushering the kids toward her. "They just ran off when I went to the restroom. It's my first time taking them out like this." Her apology faltered when her gaze shifted to Cade and her eyes went slightly wide. "Whoa, you two are such a hot couple," she blurted, the words slipping out like she hadn't even considered holding them back. I laughed softly, shaking my head. "That's honest." From beside her, Vivery piped up, "We just told her she's pretty." "She is, isn't she?" the woman murmured absent-mindedly. Then she turned to us again. "Sorry again," she said with a small smile. "My name is Luna, by the way. I turned to Cade when I heard her name. She would be the perfect werewolf with it. "My name's Arden," I introduced. "This is my boyfriend, Cade." Cade nodded at her absent-mindedly, and she gave me a subtle thumbs up, as if saying I had chosen right. Then she clapped her hands together. "All right, they're on a date, so let's go." The children waved enthusiastically, and I waved back, my smile lingering until they disappeared into the flow of pedestrians. When I turned to Cade, I expected some amused remark about the encounter, but he was quiet. His jaw was relaxed, his gaze fixed somewhere ahead rather than on me. There was a faint red tinge on his cheek, not bright. It was probably the sun, but my smile dipped anyway. "You're not fond of children, I asked gently. He glanced at me, then away again. I never thought about it. He wasn't lying. I could hear it in the even tone of his voice. But I also knew Cade and how his childhood was surrounded by shadows and storms. Maybe children weren't something he'd ever had the luxury of imagining for himself. "So you don't want children?" I pressed softly. He didn't answer right away, and that pause was telling. My heart tightened slightly in my chest. I guessed that meant no. However, since we were partners, I wanted to respect it. "I never said that," he replied, and there was no hesitation this time. My eyes lifted to his. He leaned forward slightly, resting his elbows on the table. "Whatever you want, I'll do. It's your body, so it's ultimately your decision. If you want it to just be us for the rest of our lives, that's fine. If you want little pups running around," a small smile tugged at his lips, "I'm all for it." For a moment I forgot to breathe. The simplicity and certainty in his tone were overwhelming. No hesitation, no trying to convince me one way or the other, just unwavering support. I stared at him, my heart doing an entirely unhelpful series of somersaults. How did I land such a green flag? After eating, Cade and I decided to take a walk along the beach. We'd already planned to swim tomorrow. Cade insisted he'd win any race we had, but for now, a casual stroll sounded perfect. The waves swam lazily toward the shore, their foam dissolving into the wet sand before licking at my toes. Cade walked beside me, our hands intertwined, and every now and then he'd squeeze my fingers. At one point, he stopped walking and reached into my bag with a mischievous glint in his eyes. "Ah!" he announced, pulling out the blanket he'd stuffed there earlier without telling me. I knew it would come in handy. I laughed. "You hid that in my bag?" He grinned, leaning down to press a soft kiss to my head and setting it up for me. "Guilty. I'll be right back. Restroom break." I rolled my eyes but couldn't help smiling as I watched him jog off toward the small facilities further up the beach. I straightened the blanket over the sand, letting my body sink into its softness, and closed my eyes. The warmth of the sun soaked into my skin, and for a moment I just breathed. I breathed in the ocean, the sun, and the faint scent of Cade still clinging to the blanket beneath me. That was when I felt the sunlight dimming against my closed lids, the warmth interrupted by a shadow falling across my face. I smiled lazily, already picturing Cade crouched down, ready to kiss me again. "That was fast," I murmured. But when I opened my eyes, it wasn't Cade. A man I didn't recognize stood there, his features framed by sun-bleached hair and a surfboard tucked casually under one arm. He was young, maybe a few years older than me, and his easy stance made him seem harmless. His tanned skin glistened slightly, probably from the ocean water still clinging to him. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice carrying a kind of hesitant sincerity. "I couldn't help but notice you were alone." My lips parted slightly in surprise, and I propped myself up on my elbows. "My name's Charlie," he continued, flashing a nervous smile. "And, I think you're really pretty. Can I please have your number?" "Arden." "Oh." I was about to politely turn him down when a sharp scent cut through the salty air. It was Cade's scent mixed with jealousy. It was faint but unmistakable. My eyes flicked to the side, and there he was, standing a few feet away, gaze locked on us. Before I could call out to him, he started walking toward me. His steps were steady, but his jaw was set, and the way his eyes narrowed ever so slightly told me exactly how he felt about what he'd walked in on. Charlie glanced between the two of us, probably realizing this wasn't just a girl lounging at the beach situation. Still, Cade didn't shoo him away immediately. Instead, he came right up to him, extending a hand toward him. "Do you have anything you need?" Cade's voice was polite, but even then, he sounded intimidating. Charlie pursed his lips. His gaze darted to me, then back to Cade, and for a second I thought he might try to insist. But instead, a deep blush crept up his cheeks, and he shook his head quickly. No, no, I'm good. And just like that, he stepped back, turning on his heel and walking away, though I could see the stiffness in his shoulders that came from retreating under pressure. The moment he was out of earshot, Cade let out a low grumble as he dropped down onto the blanket beside me. I laughed, the sound bubbling out of me until I had to cover my mouth. What was that? Cade shot me a look, his lips twitching like he was trying not to smile. I couldn't even leave for a second without someone flocking to you. It's a crime to be that pretty. Heat rushed to my cheeks, and I tried to glance away to hide it, but my eyes caught on Charlie again. He hadn't gone far. He was lingering at the water's edge, pretending to watch the waves, but every few moments his gaze drifted back toward us. I smirked. I'm one to talk, Cade. It seems he fell in love with you instead. His brows drew together in a faint frown, and he didn't answer. Not with words, anyway. Instead, he reached over, gripped the blanket beneath me, and in one smooth motion hauled me up, fireman carry style. Cade, I yelped, clutching his back to steady myself as the world tilted. Where are you taking me? Away from the eyes of the humans, he said, voice firm but teasing around the edges. They like you too much, from children to the oldies. Oh, come on, Cade, not the children! I wriggled in his hold, but he only tightened his grip. We need to explore the beach. He smirked without looking down at me. We'll still be at the beach. Then he ran, faster than the wind could catch us, the scenery blurring as the salty air whipped past. My hair flew wildly, and I clutched onto him harder, my laughter torn away by the speed. When he finally slowed, the noise of the more crowded part of the shore had faded entirely. We stood at a secluded stretch of beach. A single house sat a short distance from the shore, its weathered stone painted a pale, sun-bleached blue. Before I could even process it, Cade set me on my feet and reached into his pocket. The metallic jingle of keys cut through the sound of the waves, and my brows knit together. Cade, I said slowly as he strode toward the front door. Why were we intruding on this untouched home? I didn't want this to end with another Mr. Winters situation where we discover something weird. Don't worry, he said over his shoulder, slipping the key into the lock. It's our family home. We take Honey here often to detox. Oh, my suspicion dissolved into surprise. Oh, you're really rich. He shook his head without missing a beat, pushing the door open to reveal a sunlit interior that still smelled fresh. I followed him inside, still looking around. How about our things at the hotel? We're going back there, he said simply, walking deeper into the house. Then he turned, his eyes locking onto me. But for now... Before I could ask what he meant, he crossed the room in 2 long strides, caught me by the waist, and guided me backward until I felt the edge of a bed behind my knees. Then he pushed me down onto it with a force that didn't hurt. He leaned over me, one hand braced on the mattress, the other lightly at my hip. You don't know how much I've been holding myself back, he murmured, his voice dropping lower. And then his lips were on mine. The kiss was urgent and greedy. His mouth moved against mine with heat, and when his tongue brushed the seam of my lips, I opened for him without thinking. The taste of him was warm and intoxicating, and I felt my fingers hold onto the fabric of his shirt, pulling him closer. His tongue slid against mine, teasing and claiming all at once, and the low sound he made in the back of his throat sent shivers racing down my spine. He deepened the kiss, tilting his head to angle for more, his thumb brushing over my jaw. He continued kissing me, deeper, hungrier, more intense than I could ever imagine. I could barely keep up with him. My hands found his jaw, then his shoulders, and then they were tangled in his hair because I needed him closer. I wanted to drown in him. I was lost in Cade, completely, shamelessly lost. Back then, I used to imagine what his lips would feel like. Sometimes I'd catch myself looking at his mouth, wondering if he kissed softly or with the same commanding fire he carried everywhere else. I thought about it far too often for someone who tried to convince herself she didn't need him. And now here I was, tasting him, breathing him, holding him. He was really mine. Really, really mine. Goodness, how did it come to this? How did someone like me, scarred and fractured, end up with something like this? Someone like him? I never thought I would have a moment that felt so unshakably ours. I never thought I would feel this full. His hands cupped my face. I let myself melt into it. Then something brushed against my skin, a faint, cool touch that didn't belong to him. I felt it on my hand, specifically my ring finger. I stilled, breath-catching, and gently pushed against his chest. His brow furrowed at first, but I lifted my hand between us. My heart thudded. There, glinting in the light, was a ring. At first, I thought it might be a diamond, but it wasn't. The stone was clear, but it was also tinged blue. My breath trembled as realization struck me like lightning. It was the same stone from my mom's ring. I knew it as surely as I knew my own name. My throat tightened, my vision stinging. I looked up at Cade, the question already trembling on my lips. "Cade," I whispered, "where did you get this?" "Arden." Cade stared at me for a moment, his eyes lingering in a way that made my heart beat harder. Then, without a word, he took my hand gently and guided me to sit down beside him. The cool sea air brushed against my skin, but his touch was warm. He reached for my hand again, fixing the ring properly on my finger. "This stone," he began, "it's rare these days. Well, actually, it's always been rare. But I looked for it. Another one of my works." I couldn't breathe properly. "I knew you didn't want to use your mom's necklace in case it got damaged," he continued, glancing at me with a faint smile. "So I got this for you instead. It's called Distos." "Distos?" I repeated quietly. He nodded. "It can detect emotions of anyone with the blood that's been inputted into it, and anything that has the DNA from that blood, even from a distance." I gasped softly as I stared at the ring again. My fingertips brushed the stone, and I felt an odd warmth radiating from it. "I know it's too early for me to ask you to marry me," Cade said, hesitant in a way I rarely ever heard from him. "I feel like I still have so much to prove to you. So this isn't about that. This is just to show my dedication to you." My chest tightened, though not in pain. "I actually planned to give it to you on our last day," he admitted with a soft laugh. "But when you looked so fondly at those children earlier, I thought, maybe I should give you something now." "Cade," my voice faltered because there was no way to gather all the things I wanted to say into one sentence. But before I could speak again, he stood up and walked a few steps away, disappearing for a moment into the shadows. "There's more?" I called after him. I couldn't believe how he could prepare so many things for me during his busy week. When he came back, my breath caught. In his hands was a small white chest, almost identical to my mother's, and a Polaroid camera dangling from his wrist. "What's that?" I asked, my eyes narrowing slightly, though my heart was already pounding from its familiar shape. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he lifted the camera, pointed at me, and, click, captured the moment. The sound startled me. "Hey!" I laughed, embarrassed. "What was that for?" Still saying nothing, he took my hand again. He slid the ring from my finger, just for a moment, and turned the chest over in his palm. At the bottom was a tiny slot. He placed the ring's stone into the slot, and there was a soft click as it opened. Inside, there was an empty space. Cade gently placed the Polaroid inside, and then it hit me. My lips parted in shock. "This," my voice trembled, "this is just like my mom's." He hummed, finally meeting my gaze again. "A place to keep memories." I swallowed hard, my eyes stinging. Still, Cade wasn't finished. He reached into his pocket and pulled out another ring, his ring. It was simpler than mine, but still beautiful, with a smaller Distos stone embedded in it. My heart swelled at the sight of it. "So," he said quietly, shyly for once, "if we ever have future children—" His eyes softened, and there was a small smile playing on his lips. "We can leave them letters." The wind stirred between us, carrying his scent. I could hear the sound of my own heartbeat in my ears. My fingers curled protectively around the chest. I wanted to tell him that no gift could mean more than this, because it was the kind of love that didn't just exist in the present. It was love that reached forward into futures we hadn't even lived yet, futures where we'd still be side by side. My eyes stung, and before I could think better of it, I threw my arms around Cade. I buried my face in his shoulder, breathing him in. "How can you be so thoughtful?" I whispered. He let out a soft chuckle. "Because I was pretty thoughtless when we first met, only wanting to do everything for my own benefit and Honey's." His hand stroked my back gently. "You make me want to do these things." His voice dropped to a murmur, so tender it made my heart twist. I pulled back just enough to see his face. "I know how special your mom is to you," he continued, "even when you've only met for a short time. With this chest, I hope we can change your parents' belly history and only give it to our children when our time on earth is truly up." My lips trembled. I wanted to tell him that no one had ever understood me like this, that I didn't even know love could be so quiet and so loud at the same time. But no words came. I just nodded, because anything else would have shattered me completely. "Don't cry," he whispered, brushing his thumb under my eye before leaning in to kiss me softly. When he pulled back, there was the faintest smirk playing at his lips. "Want to write the first letter?" I laughed through my tears, shaking my head at its absurdity. "We don't even have a child yet," I muttered, still smiling. "It doesn't matter. I'm thinking ahead," he said, teasing but sincere. I rolled my eyes and nodded. "All right, let's do it." We sat cross-legged on the bed, the little white chest between us, and Cade pulled out a pen and paper. He started first, the scratch of the pen steady in the quiet room. Then he slid it toward me, and I read the first few lines, smiling widely before I added my own words. "Dear little one, you're not on this earth yet, or even in your mom's stomach, but we're advanced thinkers, and we want you to know that you already matter to us. We have something beautiful together, and one day we'll give you something even more beautiful, a home filled with laughter, safety, and love. You'll be born not out of duty or chance, but because we chose to bring you into this world. You will be born out of love. We can't promise the world will always be kind, but we can promise that in our arms you'll always find peace. You'll know the sound of your mom's laugh when she can't stop, the way she hums without realizing, the warmth of her hugs that can chase away any nightmare. You'll know the way your dad tells bad jokes to make you smile, how he never lets go of your hand in a crowd, and how he'd move mountains just to see you happy. We hope you'll grow to be brave but gentle, strong but kind, curious enough to make mistakes and wise enough to learn from them. We hope you'll find people who love you for exactly who you are, though we already know we will be at the top of that list. Until the day we get to meet you, we'll keep living, laughing, and collecting little pieces of our life together, so that one day you can see how your story began, long before you even took your first breath. Until the day comes, love Mom and Dad, Arden and Cade. And Cade. The day had been nothing but a blur of obligations and a ridiculous amount of interruptions that left me wondering if I had somehow aged 50 years in the last week. Morning came with the same grueling cycle, training sessions with the young wolves. I wasn't just standing on the sidelines either. I was barking orders, correcting stances, demonstrating how to hold their ground, even wrestling a few of the cockier ones into the dirt to remind them that arrogance didn't equate to skill. Sweat was pouring off me by the time the sun had risen fully, and the teens, even the stubborn ones, had wide-eyed respect plastered on their faces. But the work didn't stop when training ended. My presence was requested in a dozen different places at once. Council updates, reviewing patrol formations, checking supplies. Every elder and officer seemed to think their problem deserved priority, and somehow I was the one they all came running to. By the time lunch rolled around, I hadn't eaten, my head was pounding, and I just dismissed the latest round of complaints when I heard a shrill voice cry out across the courtyard. "Mr. Prater, Elder, help!" I froze mid-step. "Elder?" I turned, only to find a group of children standing by a tall oak tree, all pointing upwards. My brows knit together, but I walked over anyway. "What's the problem?" "Our ball, it's stuck," one boy said, cheeks flushed. Sure enough, a red ball was wedged between two branches, far out of their reach. I sighed. "And how exactly did you think you'd get it down?" "Throwing rocks," another muttered. I sighed and shook my head, finding them a bit cute. They were the children of the workers, waiting for their parents to finish their respective duties. I had improved the playground for them in the past week, seeing how they appeared quite bored in this huge place. "Wait a moment," I said, bending my knees and jumping with one swift motion that snagged the ball free. I dropped back to the ground and tossed it to the boy. His eyes widened, and his grin was blinding. "Thank you, Mr. Prater, Elder." I froze again. Was I really that old now? I had just turned 21, but apparently in their eyes, I was closer to being a relic than a mentor. Praetor Elder, I muttered under my breath as I walked away, running a hand down my face. Unbelievable. Well, I couldn't blame them entirely. I had been working non-stop for a week straight. But today was supposed to mark the end of it. Today I was finally done. Done with the meetings, the endless tasks, the running around. Most importantly, I had finally found someone who claimed to be selling distos. That stone was the one thing I'd decided Arden deserved to have. Something rare that was tied to her mother. I'd gone through contacts, dead ends, and even sketchy ads from humans to track it down. And now, finally, it was within reach. I could almost taste relief. But of course, relief didn't last long in this place. Just as I was packing up my notes and clearing my desk, the door to my office creaked open. An elder popped his head in, white hair wild, glasses sliding down his nose. "Ah, Cade, there you are." I set my pen down wary. "What is it?" "Help me find my password." "What?" "My password," he repeated, stepping inside as though I hadn't understood him. "I can't find it anywhere." "Did you see it?" I just stared at him. "Your password?" "Yes," he huffed like it was the most natural request in the world. "I wrote it down, and now I don't know where it's gone." I pressed my lips together tightly, forcing back the sarcastic retort itching to come out. "No," I responded flatly. The elder sighed, rubbing his wrinkled forehead. "Nobody knows where it is. Nobody can help me." Goodness. These were the people ruling this place? A man who could barely remember a password had influence over decisions that shaped territories. I was beginning to think an emergency tech seminar might be a matter of national security. "Can you help me find it?" he asked again. I clenched my jaw. I had somewhere to be, but he looked so damn helpless standing there. I hesitated, weighing my chances of leaving without being cursed by guilt. Finally, I sighed. "Fine." His face lit up like a child's. "Ah, wonderful." With that, I went to his computer and reset the password, tapping my foot on the ground with every passing moment. "There you go," I said. "Next time, just make it simple." "Thank you, Cade," the elder smiled. "I'm glad we have someone like you here." I shook my head slightly, a smile appearing on my lips. Well, it seemed helping him wasn't so bad. However, by the time I stepped out of the office, it was already late afternoon. My gut twisted. I was behind schedule. I cursed under my breath and broke into a run, heading for my car. The drive east would take at least an hour, and that was without interruptions. I had no choice but to make it fast. The road stretched long and straight. My exhaustion weighed down on my eyelids. More than once, I caught my head dipping and my vision blurring. I forced my eyes wide, fingers gripping the steering wheel tight. I couldn't afford to be tired. By the time I pulled into the small town, the sky was tinted with orange. I parked hastily, shoved open the door, and strode toward the narrow shop at the corner. The seller looked up as the bell chimed. His expression shifted quickly into a smile. "Oh, you're here." "Yes," I said, stepping forward. "The Disto's stone." The seller's smile softened. "We just sold it." My eyes narrowed instantly. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. The man across the counter tilted his head, his thick accent dragging his words into something almost lazy. "You were late." My jaw tightened. "I told you, I can pay for it." The seller shook his head slowly. "But I don't have online bank," he said, lips smacking. "So the last man, he paid cash. I can't take it back." My chest burned with frustration. I had been running myself ragged, timing every second of my life to finish my duties, only to arrive here and hear this. I pinched the bridge of my nose. "Where can I get one now?" "Now?" His eyes twinkled like he was enjoying my suffering. "Today," I clarified through gritted teeth. "I want it today." "Ah," he drawled, nodding sagely. "I harvest for you, but it's hard to find." My brows furrowed. "What?" He stretched his arms behind his head like he had all the time in the world. "No working for me now," he said, yawning. "If you want, you can go." I point. I bit the inside of my cheek. "Seriously?" "The ring already prepared for you," he added as if it were consolation. "We just attached the stone, but my eyes don't work in dark." His English, despite being broken, was more understandable than ever, and somehow his words sounded more insulting. I almost laughed, but my exhaustion had long since replaced humor. "Okay," I muttered, exhaling through my nose. "Point the direction." The seller raised his hand slowly, pointing out into the fields behind his small shop. My shoulders sagged. This was insanity. However, I couldn't stop now. The sunset bore down on me, sweat already starting to roll down my back. The man stayed behind, lounging in his chair with a snack in hand. Every time I glanced back, he was eating something new, a piece of dried fruit, then nuts, then something fried wrapped in paper. I gritted my teeth and muttered, "You're enjoying this, huh?" under my breath. Branches tugged at my sleeves as I pushed deeper into the thicket. The seller had given me vague instructions. Follow the hill, look for shine. That was it. I crouched low, sweeping aside rocks, dirt, anything that caught the remaining sunlight wrong. My eyes strained as the minutes dragged on. My legs ached, but I pressed forward. For Arden, I told myself, always for her. At one point, I slipped on a loose stone, my palm slamming against the dirt. I cursed and sat back on my heels, brushing myself off. Sweat poured into my eyes, stinging. Still, I stood again and kept walking. The seller's lazy voice echoed in my head. My eyes don't work in dark. Well, mine barely worked right now, but I had no choice. I stopped, panting, wiping my face with the back of my sleeve. For a second, I wondered if I should just give up. However, something glimmered. My eyes locked on a faint glow between two jagged rocks near the base of a tree. Heart pounding, I stumbled forward, crouching low. My fingers brushed against it and warmth radiated through my hand. I pulled it free, a small, uncut stone, pulsing faintly like it carried a heartbeat of its own. "Is it this?" I called out, lifting it toward the direction of the shop owner. The seller's voice floated back. "Perfect." I shook my head, muttering curses under my breath as I carried it back. My entire body felt heavy, but I forced myself forward. When I reached the shop again, the seller was munching on something fried, barely moving as he motioned for me to hand it over. "Bring here, I will cut and attach." I placed the stone into his hands, watching him work. His fingers appeared accustomed to the tools, scraping against the stone with care. Sparks flickered, the air filled with the scent of burning. Sweat dripped from my temples, down my neck, into my shirt. I wiped it away absently, eyes never leaving his hands. Finally, he held it up. The ring, the band already polished and prepared, now glistened with the stone set perfectly in the middle. "Done," he said simply, sliding it into a small box. Ah, that memory was something I wanted to forget. However, as I looked at Arden now, at how she was looking at the stone and at me like I had saved her universe, I felt it was all worth it. I smiled while looking at her. "Do you like it?" I asked softly. "Like it?" she exclaimed. "I love it." And just like that, all my exhaustion melted away. Arden. I often found myself traveling to the Callahan residence whenever I had the chance. Sometimes it was for Cade's business, sometimes for campaign duties. But honestly, the person I always felt a burst of excitement to see was Honey. Honey had gotten a lot better since Mr. Winters was arrested. It was like a slow thaw after a long winter. She still wasn't back to her usual self. Her laughter sometimes caught in her throat, and there were moments when words failed her, or when she'd get that faraway look in her eyes. However, she wasn't regressing anymore. Instead, she was moving forward, step by careful step. Her speech was getting better, too. Doctors had been helping her, not just with her body, but with her confidence. And though she wasn't quite all the way back, she was aware of that fact. With Cade now serving as praetor, and with no other heir to the North's throne, the pressure had naturally begun to fall on Honey. She knew it. Everyone knew it. In her quiet, determined way, she was working toward it. Fortunately, her parents never pushed her. They always said there was no rush, that they were still healthy, still strong, and that she had time. Still, the difference in Honey was clear. She had improved drastically. I couldn't help but feel proud of her every time I saw her. "Arden!" I didn't even have time to catch my breath before Honey threw her arms around me. I laughed, hugging her back tightly. For a moment, as I held her, I was struck by how much she felt older than both Cade and me. There was a steady warmth in her embrace, like a sister who knew exactly what you needed without words. At times like this, I was grateful for her presence in my life. "Cade didn't come with you?" she asked slowly, but her words were clear. I shook my head. "Emergency," I explained gently, "but he'll come around soon. He promised he'd be here for lunch." Honey smiled, her whole face brightening. "Perfect. Mom is already cooking. We were about to head inside, the warmth of the North's estate pulling us in, when a voice called out from behind us. Honey. Honey froze, her shoulders stiffening. I turned toward the sound. A man stood there, maybe around Honey's age, maybe a little older. He carried himself with a kind of rugged ease, his broad shoulders relaxed, his hands tucked awkwardly into his pockets. His beard gave him that lumberjack feel, the type of man you imagine chopping wood in the dead of winter. But there was something softer about him, too. Something gentle in his eyes, something teddy bear-like. He looked like the kind of man who'd cradle small animals in his hands and smile down at them. The kind of man who, oddly enough, looked like he'd love Honey. My eyes widened as realization struck, and then I looked back at her. Honey frowned, her cheeks turning the faintest shade of pink. Trevor, what are you doing here? The man, Trevor, scratched the back of his neck, a bashful smile tugging at his lips. I wanted to see you. His voice was warm, deep, but hesitant. I just harvested some honey, he added quickly, glancing down. Dad told me to deliver it to you. I couldn't stop myself from smiling. So that was it. So this man was a beekeeper, and Honey, ironically, really did love honey. It was one of her favorite things, a small comfort she always indulged in. She must have been getting it from his family. I looked at her again, and this time her face gave her away completely. Her cheeks were redder now, her eyes darting anywhere but at Trevor. She shook her head quickly, trying to regain her composure. "Why would you come all the way here for that?" she said. "Leave." But I could see that she didn't actually want him to leave. Her fingers twisted slightly in the fabric of her sleeve, her eyes flicking up toward him and then down again. Her whole body language was a betrayal of the words coming out of her mouth. She wanted him here, but maybe she didn't know how to say it. Maybe she didn't know how to let him in. I cleared my throat softly, breaking the tense silence before it could stretch too far. Both of them looked at me, startled, as though they'd forgotten I was standing right here in the middle of this budding drama. "Well," I said with a small smile, tilting my head, "do you want to join us for lunch?" That's how we found ourselves here, with Trevor at the table. Cade's mom was delighted while his dad, not so much. I could already imagine Cade's reaction. His dad's brows were furrowed. His mom, however, glowed, asking Trevor questions about his bees. Trevor was polite, careful with his words, but passionate. When he spoke about gardening and beekeeping, his whole face lit up, and somehow that energy softened even Cade's father's stance little by little. Honey sat quietly at first, shy, but her cheeks were pink as she listened to him. Every now and then her lips curled in a small secret smile. I couldn't stop smiling either. Looking at her like this, I wondered if she ever felt she deserved a new love. Elijah had been her mate, but fate wasn't always kind, and Elijah was gone. It wasn't betrayal to live again. It wasn't disloyalty to smile again. If anything, I knew Elijah would want her to be happy. Honey deserved that, and if Trevor could give it to her, then maybe this was exactly what she needed. The door suddenly opened. Cade stepped inside, looking weary from whatever emergency had kept him away, but his entire expression softened the moment his eyes landed on me. He smiled, making my heart skip a beat. However, when his gaze landed on Trevor sitting beside Honey, his smile fell and his eyes narrowed. "Who are you?" Trevor immediately stood, bowing respectfully. "Praetor, it's an honor to be in your presence." Cade ignored the courtesy, repeating his question firmly. "Who are you?" Trevor cleared his throat, keeping his composure. "My name is Trevor. I am a beekeeper from the far north." "Why are you here?" Cade asked, his jaw tightening. Honey cleared her throat softly. "He's a friend," she said, her voice small. "He's eating with us." The words seemed harmless, but Cade's face shifted into something more complicated. I recognized it immediately. He didn't see Honey as fragile anymore, but to him she was still precious. Someone he had sworn, consciously or not, to guard from every danger. The problem was that Cade's instinct was to see anyone near her as a danger. Before he could say something rash, something that might hurt Honey or embarrass Trevor, I stood quickly and slipped my hand into Cade's. "Come with me," I whispered, tugging him toward the balcony. He resisted for a heartbeat, still glaring at Trevor, but eventually followed. The cool air outside hit us, fresh with pine and the faint sweetness of flowers. I turned to him, cupping his face and pressing a kiss to his lips before he could speak. His brows drew tighter as he narrowed his eyes at me. "What was that?" he asked. "Who was that?" I shook my head, sighing. "He already told you. He's Trevor, Honey's friend." "He doesn't look at her like she's just a friend," Cade muttered darkly. I exhaled, resting my forehead against his chest. "Maybe not. But don't you think it's time? Honey's getting better, Cade. You've seen it. She's smiling genuinely again. I know you. You wouldn't want your sister to be alone forever. Nor would you want to deprive her if she really likes him." His silence stretched between us. I tilted my head up, gently holding his cheek so he'd meet my eyes. "I think you should loosen up a little," I said softly. "Fenra is in good hands. Honey's working hard, harder than anyone, to make sure the North thrives, just like it did under you. She wants to lead too. With Trevor by her side, I think the North would be in great hands." Cade's eyes flickered with conflict, then softened just slightly. He let out a long sigh, the fight draining out of him. "I guess," he muttered, reluctant but not closed off. "Good," I said, grinning, giving his face a playful squeeze. "Because if you try to get between my ship, you'll be enemy number one." "Ship?" he repeated, brow furrowed. "Are you sailing?" I chuckled, shaking my head. "Oh, baby, you really are getting old." "Hey," he exclaimed, appearing sensitive about his age. "I'm still youthful." I continued to giggle while looking up at him. "Whatever you say." Arden. The squeals of little voices rang across the training grounds, one that pierced through even the thickest walls of discipline. I had been warned this would be chaos, and they were right. It was the first time the united factions opened their gates to the children of the workers for a training workshop, and it seemed Cade was already slightly regretting it. They were alive in every sense of the word, tiny pups darting around like little tornadoes, tripping over each other, laughing, shrieking, their boundless energy filling the air. Right at the center of it all was Cade. I pressed a hand to my lips to stifle a laugh. He was standing tall and imposing, his arms crossed behind his back in a stance that could silence even the bravest of commanders. However, the pups didn't buy it. They all stiffened when he cleared his throat, like tiny soldiers pretending they understood the concept of discipline. But the moment he spoke, they dissolved back into giggles. "Why are you so tall?" a little boy suddenly blurted. Cade's brow arched. "Because I drank milk when I was younger." More laughter erupted, followed by another shrill question. "Can you be my dad?" That one made him freeze. I nearly choked on my own laughter, my hand gripping the nearby railing just to steady myself. Cade's ears went pink, his jaw tightening as he tried to come up with a suitable response. He cleared his throat, glaring at me as though daring me to laugh louder. "You already have fathers." "But not a preater dad," another pup said, their wide eyes shining with complete seriousness. "Yeah, prater dad," a chorus echoed. Cade's expression was priceless. Just then, another voice piped up, pointing right at me. "Who's that pretty lady?" Cade glanced at me, his entire body relaxing in an instant. The stern facade melted like ice under the sun, his lips curved tenderly, and he answered without hesitation. "That is the love of my life." The pups gasped dramatically. Meanwhile, others made gagging noises. "Yeah!" they chorused in perfect unison. I couldn't hold back anymore. I laughed, stepping forward, finally rescuing my mate from drowning in childish curiosity. All right, enough of that. Are you ready to train?" "Yes!" the pups shouted, their small fists punching into the air. I grinned, proud of their spirit, but when I glanced at Cade, he was frowning. "Why is it," he muttered under his breath, "that they actually listen to you?" I bit my lip to keep from smiling too smugly. Maybe because I don't stand there like a scary statue. He huffed, muttering something about discipline and respect, but the moment I clapped my hands and called the pups over, they all gathered around me like ducklings following their mother. Their eyes were wide, and they hung on to every word I said. Meanwhile, Cade was left standing alone in the middle of the field. A tiny hand tugged at his sleeve. "Can you lift me, prater dad?" Before he could even respond, another pup grabbed his other hand. "Me too." And another, and another. Soon enough, Cade had one child clinging to his arm, another trying to climb up his leg, and two more hanging off his back like little koalas. "Saints above," Cade groaned, his patience tested in ways the council never could. "I am not." Horsey ride, a girl squealed. I nearly doubled over, yet somehow Cade gave in. One pup climbed onto his shoulders, another was perched on his back, and he trudged forward on all fours like some noble steed resigned to his fate. "Again, faster!" they exclaimed. From the sidelines, a group of council members and staff whispered with poorly concealed grins. "Our praetor is working so hard," one of them said, voice filled with amusement. Truly, no one sacrifices more for the factions. I covered my mouth, but the smile broke free anyway. My heart swelled, warmth spreading through every corner of me as I watched him. He looked exhausted and completely outnumbered, but there was a softness in his eyes he couldn't hide. The same softness he had when he looked at me. "All right, you little rascals," I clapped again. "Time to focus." They scrambled off him reluctantly, returning to my side with eager nods. We practiced shifting drills, nothing advanced, just movements to help them understand their wolf skills. They stumbled, fell, and laughed, but they tried with all their hearts. By the time training ended, the pups were sprawled out on the grass, sweaty and grinning. Cade collapsed onto the ground beside me, one arm thrown over his eyes. Never again. I smirked, leaning down to kiss his temple. "Admit it, you had fun." "I was used as a horse. A very good horse," I teased. His lips twitched, betraying the smile he was fighting. What a tease. The last of the children was finally fetched by their parents, leaving behind echoes of laughter and the faint warmth of their tiny hands clinging to me. I leaned back against the fence, brushing strands of hair away from my face, and watched Cade. Despite the soreness in every line of his body, he still crouched down to bid the last pup goodbye, ruffling his hair gently. His voice, though tired, was warm as he told the little boy to keep training hard. That boy beamed at him like he'd been blessed by the moon goddess. I couldn't stop smiling as I watched their interaction. When Cade finally straightened, his back popped audibly, and I nearly winced for him. He turned to me, narrowing his eyes. "You're enjoying this," he muttered in disbelief. I giggled, covering my mouth with my hand, but not nearly enough to hide the sound. "Maybe just a little." His shoulders sagged, and he groaned as he walked toward me slowly. "Those pups, really." I pushed myself off the fence and walked toward him, watching the stubborn frown linger on his face even though his eyes softened when they met mine. His hand instinctively found my waist, like it always did, even if he was clearly sore from letting them climb all over him. "Sit," I ordered gently, pressing him down onto the grass. He raised an eyebrow, but before he could argue, I was already kneeling behind him, my fingers pressing into his shoulders. He groaned loudly, throwing his head just slightly to enjoy the feeling. "Arden," he muttered. "Don't stop." I chuckled again, kneading harder, feeling the knots in his muscles slowly unravel. Who knew the great praetor Cade Callahan would be brought to his knees by a group of pups under 10? "You're not even like this after training the adult warriors." "Not funny," he grumbled, but I could hear the faint smile in his voice. His head tilted slightly, allowing me better access. "They climbed me like I was some sort of—" "A horse," I supplied, smirking. "Yes, I saw." He groaned again, this time in indignation, and I couldn't help but laugh. My hands slowed, moving with more care, tracing down his arms. I leaned in closer, letting my breath brush against his ear. "But I can see a good future," I whispered. He stilled. Slowly, he turned his head to look at me, his dark eyes catching mine. "A good future?" he asked quietly, his voice softer than I'd heard it all day. I smiled, my thumbs brushing his skin. "With children. With us. You'd be a good dad, Cade." For a moment, silence stretched between us, broken only by the faint breeze carrying the laughter of the pups already far away. Then his lips tugged, showing a full smile I had gotten used to seeing but never thought I would be seeing every day. "I can't wait," he said simply,